Armored train in the apocalypse. Hey! Look who's back for more adventures. We love having you here to continue this story that keeps us all awake. Important note, all of this is pure fiction. So don't try any techniques you hear here in real life, your neighbor might call the cops. This amazing novel and all its rights belong to the original author. We're just the ones giving it voice and drama. Are you enjoying the show? Prove it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and leaving that like that motivates us so much. And if you want VIP access to exclusive content, our Patreon is waiting with things you won't find anywhere else. Chapter 1 Train Conductor's Log. The two railway rails, polished to a gleaming shine, shimmered in the sunlight. A train roared past, and the crowds wandering through the fields and villages surged forward, running and jumping. In several carriages, groups of passengers seemed infected by this enthusiasm, leaning out of the windows and shouting in response. The remaining carriages, though packed tightly together, remained coldly silent. There are 1,226 people on this train, 670 men and 556 women. But only 2 people can stay in the front carriage, the remaining 1,224 will have to live in the back carriages. You say you want to join us, what makes you think you can? Huan smiled faintly, brazenly scrutinizing the girl before him. The girl wore a small, fitted gray t-shirt and dark blue jeans that hugged her leg curves perfectly, the cuffs flaring out at the ankles like a simple, elegant little flower. The girl calmly analyzed, I'm a graduate student in mechanical and electronic engineering, currently pursuing my master's degree. My father is a railway engineer, so if you need train repairs or modifications, I can help. Besides, I exercise regularly and am healthy, so I won't be a burden. Huan was quite surprised, he hadn't expected such talent among these people. Although a bit green, she would definitely be useful for his armed train plan. You can say your name now. Jing. Okay, you're hired. Wait a minute. The girl interrupted Huan, I have a condition. Huan frowned. He didn't like being bargained with, but he tolerated it because she was a talented person. Condition? Bring one person. Jing pulled a woman from the carriage behind her, her brows furrowed with worry, looking at him nervously. My mother is a nurse, she can handle some simple illnesses. Huan's eyes brightened. The woman before him bore a striking resemblance to Jing, a mature version of a young girl. She wore a beige knit sweater, her long hair cascading over her rounded shoulders. Her demeanor was gentle, her lips parted slightly, and her soft voice trembled with embarrassment. Mr. Su. She was beautiful, but of little use to the plan. However, he was a man tempered by the apocalypse, his standards much lower than most. No problem, come to my room tonight. I need to test your professional knowledge. Jing raised an eyebrow, finding his tone odd but not overthinking it. But the woman, experienced in such matters, naturally sensed something was amiss. Holding her daughter's arm, her voice held a hint of pleading, she's still a child. Huan nodded in understanding. Then come with her tonight. Next. A commotion erupted as a chubby, greasy middle-aged man squeezed through the crowd. Huan instantly lost his appetite and waved his hand, forget it, that's enough for today, go back. The middle-aged man's eyes widened, and he shouted, why is it over when it's my turn? You only interviewed 5 people in total. Thinking about going back, being crammed into a small, cramped space with a group of people, and possibly being eaten by zombies in the back of the carriage at any moment, the middle-aged man's tone couldn't help but rise, becoming more and more agitated. Out of 5 people, you only picked 2 good-looking ones, and you still call this an interview? Why didn't you just pick out all the good-looking women? The people behind also became restless. What conditions do you want? Just say it. Do you want money or something? I have a gold necklace. I also have some food, can I stay in the front? I can sleep with you tonight. The smiling expression on Huan's face disappeared, and he suddenly turned cold. A finger was raised to his lips, and he said coldly, I'll give you one more chance. Get back to the back. The middle-aged man felt things had already broken down, and coupled with the pressure of the apocalypse, he completely gave up. Pointing at Huan, he cursed, you bastard, why are you occupying the front of the train, making over 1,000 of us crammed into the back? You'll die a horrible death. And you 2 sluts, this bastard just wants to sleep with you too. You've practically offered yourself up and you're still smug. When he's done with you, he'll just feed you to the zombies. There are so many women on this train, do you think you can have a few days of peace, The middle-aged man's voice abruptly stopped as a hole appeared on his forehead. His bloodshot eyes still held anger and resentment. Bang! The corpse fell to the ground, but not a drop of blood flowed from the wound. The crowd that had been crammed into the aisle between the two carriages suddenly took a large step back. Feeling the slight burning sensation on his fingertips, Huan said calmly, "Drag the body back." The crowd hesitated for a moment, but under Huan's intimidating presence, two people still dragged the corpse back. Huan stepped forward and locked the passageway door, looking at the faces behind the glass, filled with suppressed anger, a wicked smile spreading across his face. He took out a notebook and wrote on it, "First week of the apocalypse, people are still quite obedient." The notebook folded down, revealing several bold characters. Train conductor's log. Huan turned his head and saw that Yu Jing's expression was unchanged, which made him think a little more highly of her. "The last compartment is yours. Don't come out until I call you. There's a pack of biscuits and a bottle of water inside. That's your food for today," Huan said calmly. The woman hesitated, then was dragged into the soft sleeper compartment by Yu Jing, who locked the door with a click. Huan covered the glass on the passageway door and walked forward along the corridor to the deluxe soft sleeper compartment. He just pushed open the compartment door. Bang! A muffled thud came from the window in front of him. A large patch of scarlet blood spread across the window, and the dark figure was left behind by the speeding train. This horrifying scene did not move Huan in the slightest. For others, this was the first week of the apocalypse, but for him, it was 4 years and 1 week since the apocalypse. The first thing he did after being reborn was not to collect supplies or build a safe house. Instead, he bought a ticket for a vintage train tour on the global train. Because only he knew that the ground beneath his feet would continue to heat up over the next month, reaching a terrifying temperature of over 100 degrees Celsius. Water sources dried up, society collapsed, and with a massive outbreak of the zombie virus, the city instantly became a hellish place. Note, regional, not global heat wave. After discovering that the temperature was lower in the north, the surviving humans began to flee north in droves. In his previous life, he had barely escaped with his life, and then struggled for 4 years against various terrifying natural disasters before dying in despair. So the first thing he had to do after being reborn was to run north. Looking at the sweat gradually beading on his arms, and glancing at the thermometer on the wall, the red line had reached 27 degrees Celsius. Huan calmly took out his logbook. He flipped to the latest entry. December 16th, early winter, temperature 23 degrees Celsius to 27 degrees Celsius. A bunch of words were scattered around, several highlighted: vehicle, 16 days, resources, team. A month later, temperatures would exceed 100 degrees Celsius, but that didn't mean a person could survive that long. The ideal temperature for humans is 22 degrees Celsius, fluctuations will cause discomfort. Temperatures exceeding 35 degrees Celsius in humid environments and 50 degrees Celsius in dry environments pose a risk of death. Therefore, he only had 16 days. 7 days had already passed, leaving 9. And he was still 3,000 kilometers away from escaping the high temperature zone. At 120 kilometers per hour, at full speed, he could escape the high temperature zone in 2 days. But other areas were just as dire. Clean water, food, medicine, shelter, clothing, every resource was extremely difficult to obtain. Therefore, the escape vehicle must not only have strong defensive capabilities and ultra-long endurance, but also extreme load-bearing capacity. This eliminates passenger cars and airplanes. After careful consideration, only trains meet the requirements. In the early stages of the apocalypse, even this long discontinued sightseeing train can provide strong protection. Later, when personnel and supplies are in place, the train can be armed, becoming a mobile fortress. The train chosen by Huan is an old-fashioned electric-powered diesel locomotive, which, simply put, runs on oil to generate electricity. The entire train has 42 carriages, 2 for luggage and 40 for passengers. Next to the locomotive are the VIP dining car, a double-decker sightseeing car, 2 deluxe sleeper cars, 10 ordinary soft sleeper cars, and 26 hard-seat cars. Currently, Huan has occupied the first 5 carriages, forcing the rest of the passengers to the back. However, this is only temporary. These people, including the zombies on board, are all part of his plan. The large panes of glass in the carriages are great for sightseeing and also effective against the current strength of the zombies. But against the later stage zombie kings and evolved beasts, tempered glass was no different from a biscuit. So he planned to arm this train, tear through the zombie horde, and escape northward. Just imagine, outside, thunder and lightning flash, floods rage, and the zombie king, half severed, can only leave long bloody marks on the armored train, roaring in vain, watching them sit in the warm, comfortable train, eating hot pot and singing, speeding away. That feeling would be even more exhilarating than running on an overpass in a torrential downpour. It's about time to eat. After briefly noting down a few things that happened that day in his notebook, Su Huan put down his pen. This was a habit he had developed 4 years after the apocalypse, using records to combat his increasingly eroded sense of time. He locked the door and went to the dining car. The dining car was very quiet, with only the muffled thud of the train wheels rolling over the railroad tracks. Warm sunlight fell on the red and white checkered tablecloth, and the green plants in the white porcelain vase trembled slightly with the vibrations. Outside the train window, scattered zombies, startled by the noise, swarmed along the tracks, howling as they chased the train. Then they crashed headfirst into the metal carriages. Bang! Su Huan closed the refrigerator door. He placed the last green peppers on the cutting board, deliberately rinsing his hands with water to awaken his sense of touch. Feeling the cool water trickle through his fingers, Su Huan experienced a decadent, luxurious pleasure. Only by preparing these precious vegetables himself and then eating them could he truly appreciate their full joy. After preparing the vegetables, Su Huan casually pressed a button on the induction cooker. The unplugged induction cooker emitted a crisp ding. This was the core ability of a power sourcer, level 1 universal energy conversion, which currently allowed him to convert the energy within his body into light, heat, electricity, and the like with a 10% efficiency. He had used this thermal energy trick to kill the middle-aged man earlier. Logically, power sourcers at this stage could only activate small appliances and electronic products, but Su Huan, with 4 years of experience, could use some skills beyond his current level. For example, whoever he pointed at would die. This was the name given by the passengers behind them. It was strange, but it worked quite well. Last time, a woman instigated her brother, husband, and 7 or 8 others, along with a group of clever men who wanted to seize control of the train, to launch an attack at night. They spent 5 or 6 minutes brutally smashing down the carriage doors with tools. Then, like fools, they lined up in the narrow carriage to die. When the third person died, Su Huan could tell that the person in front didn't want to go forward, but was pushed and shoved by the people behind, and then Su Huan spotted them one by one, killing more than a dozen in a row. The few who were pushed onto the train cried like pigs and dogs. That night, the doors remained open. Unfortunately, no one crossed over the dozen or so corpses all night. The next day, the woman who instigated the group disappeared. Su Huan found her in the grass by the tracks. Her hair had been plucked out, and her intestines had been pulled out. Half of the people ran away in the morning. Some returned in the evening, and when they reached a new location, the number of people returned to the initial level. New fools and self-proclaimed leadership experts have emerged. The tedious cycle begins again. Su Huan initially outlined rules, but the turnover was too rapid. Those with ability preferred to trust themselves and disembark to survive on their own. Only the newcomers and the spineless cowards who lacked the skill to kill and were unwilling to face the apocalypse alone remained. These cowards even formed a tacit understanding. They would nominate the passionate, ambitious individuals to provoke Su Huan, who would then kill them. Of course, no one explicitly stated they would do this, but that's exactly what they did. Su Huan looked down on these guys and didn't bother setting any rules. Initially, the killings were taken seriously, but later they became more perfunctory. Fewer and fewer of the foolish, hot-blooded fools were being manipulated. Who had risked their life for someone they weren't related to? Su Huan's abilities were also the core of the armed train plan, the train's energy source. Of course, that was for the future. For now, the fuel tank was full. And this time was enough for him to grow strong enough to drive the train. He dried the water in the pan, turned on the range hood, poured in oil. Whoosh, the range hood emitted a low hum. The trees lining the tracks blocked the sunlight, casting flickering light on Su Huan's face. He added smoke, cooked vegetables, and the crackling of the stir-fry drowned out the roars outside. Su Huan looked up in surprise. A hapless figure, his face ashen, was hanging by the window, his eyes a dark, reddish-black, devoid of white, his mouth agape, as if he wanted to devour him through the glass. Su Huan smiled warmly, a share for everyone. He casually pulled down the window and stuffed the remaining packaging into the zombie's mouth. Zombie, losing his balance, the zombie hadn't even closed his teeth before being thrown off by the roaring train. As his body was crushed by the steel wheels, he could still vaguely hear the man's voice. Remember to eat well, this is a work of pure fiction, with no illusions. The dates, place names, and all settings are entirely fictional. Do not apply this to reality. Do not apply this to reality. Chapter 2 Renovation Plan. He closed the train window, and the food in the pot was almost cooked. He quickly thickened the sauce. It was done. He had made 2 dishes, stir-fried green peppers with dried tofu and stir-fried diced carrots with corn. These vegetables kept well, the rest of the vegetables had been eaten a few days ago. He plated the vegetables and served 3 bowls of rice. The train entered the tunnel, and darkness suddenly descended. A sharp screech of brakes rang out. Swoosh, the lights in the dining car came on, and the entire train came to a complete stop in the tunnel. Heavy footsteps echoed from the end of the dimly lit corridor. A burly figure entered the dining car, blocking the light and casting a large shadow on the table. His voice was deep and gentle. The weather is getting hotter and hotter. This was Huan, the first core member of the armed train and its driver. He had heard of him before his rebirth, but he died young and had never interacted with him. He never expected to encounter him directly after his rebirth, especially since the other person happened to be a train driver. Su Huan nodded and asked, "How much longer until we reach the meat cannery?" "We'll be there once we exit this tunnel. Then tomorrow, drive the car to the vicinity of the cannery and have them scavenge for supplies. You decide that. As long as I can see my daughter, that's all that matters." Huan finished speaking and continued eating in silence. Huan was taciturn, so most of their conversations consisted of Su Huan talking while he listened. Although somewhat dull, it was much better than his teammates in his previous life. At least he didn't have to be constantly on edge, dodging zombies and evolved beasts while also being wary of his teammates stabbing him in the back. 9 days wasn't much time. Su Huan had only completed a third of his mental to-do list, far from being ready. Supplies gathering was mostly finished, but train modification hadn't even begun. He had originally wanted to find an acquaintance from his previous life, a guy whose profession was locomotive modifier. If he trained him beforehand, changing his career path to train modification wouldn't be a problem. But now he didn't know which repair shop he was hiding in. So Su Huan decided to find another prospective member first, the Holy Mother, an extremely rare species in the apocalypse. The 2 most crucial nodes in the armed train project are energy and the broken rails. Leaving aside the evolved beasts comparable to huskies, they'll be navigating storms and plant hordes later on. The tracks there are utterly destroyed. Without repair, the armed train will be nothing more than a metal shell. An 8th Master's abilities happen to solve this problem. If he remembers correctly, he lives in an orphanage near this cannery. Thinking of this, a rare touch of warmth appeared in Su Huan's eyes. Huan finished the last grain of rice in his bowl, hesitated, and asked, "How long will this heatwave last?" Although Su Huan is mysterious and not a good person, he knows a lot. This knowledge will allow him to survive this damned apocalypse, and perhaps even return home alive to see his daughter. That's enough. And compared to the more than 1,000 people behind him in the carriage, he's doing relatively well. A year, or longer. What about the north? Will it be better? It will only get worse. The heat wave is just the beginning, even more terrifying natural disasters will follow. Su Huan's somber voice echoed in the carriage. These natural disasters seem to have been orchestrated, one after another, each area different. He casually tossed the empty bowls and chopsticks into the sink. Tomorrow, install the explosion-proof netting on the dining car windows. Understood. Su Huan waved. Go rest. Huan got up and left. Su Huan glanced at the clock hanging on the inner wall of the carriage. The hour hand pointed to 5 in the afternoon. It was still early before dark. However, the tunnel was pitch black, a bit stifling, but he wouldn't be noticed by the horde of zombies. He stretched and tossed a kitchen knife and cutting board into the sink. He didn't like washing dishes. Su Huan quietly walked towards the back carriages, pondering how to arrange them. The locomotive was out of the question. The power system basically filled it up, leaving only a little space at the control panel, which wouldn't be enough. He could just reinforce the seal later, and upgrade the power system if possible. The first dining car can be kept. In the apocalypse, besides bitterness, Only good food can soothe the soul. The team also needs a meeting room like this. The remaining space can be used to create a small storage room to store some food and clean water for daily use. The second sightseeing car should be converted into a preparation room, and the second floor can be used to attack enemies approaching the train. The third car is for himself. Before he could finish thinking, he had already reached the end of the fifth car. Subconsciously, his heels slightly lifted off the ground, his feet spread out as much as possible, stepping on the red carpet of the corridor without making a sound. Huan looked down at the doorknob, where a strand of hair was wrapped. He had just casually tied it there. Fortunately, this Miss Yu was very obedient and hadn't stepped out of the car at all during this time, not even opening the door. Knock knock knock. The sound was sudden, and Huan's raised hand froze in midair. He turned his head to look at the door connecting to the sixth car. Knock knock knock. Perhaps they didn't hear the sound. The knocking became more urgent. Some noise came from inside the soft sleeper compartment. Huan could vaguely hear the mother and daughter's conversation. Yujing was telling him not to pay attention. He lowered his hand and turned to walk towards the passageway door. Suddenly, he lifted the curtain, startling the person opposite him, who exclaimed, "The glass in the back carriage carrying zombies is cracked." "Okay, I know. Hey, hey." Ignoring the shout, Huan lowered the curtain and glanced sideways behind him. The corridor was completely dark, and the sleeper compartment was eerily quiet. Huan narrowed his eyes, returned to the front carriage, picked up his usual wrench, and opened the carriage door, listening to the wild roars echoing from the dark tunnel. He lightly leaped onto the ground. He walked along the tracks without any protection. For a seasoned survivor of the apocalypse for 4 years, darkness was his safe haven, and zombies were far more trustworthy than people. Carriages 6, 7, 8, and 9 carried people, while carriages 10 and 11 carried suddenly mutated zombies. Huan arrived outside the 9th carriage. A faint light emanated from within, like the flame of a lighter, illuminating a group of enormous, terrified shadows on the tunnel walls. Because of this light, none of the people inside the carriages saw Huan standing outside. Huan remained silent, standing there for 5 minutes. Finally, he noticed something amiss. They were tense and terrified, but their faces weren't turned towards the 10th carriage, where the zombies were locked. Instead, they were facing the front of the train. Because that was where they perceived the danger to be coming from. The light gradually dimmed. The lighter had probably run out of gas. In the last glimmer of light, he could barely make out a group of men huddled together. The leader's face was obscured, only a large, dark gray hoodie visible. Amidst the chaotic howls of the zombies, Huan, standing in the darkness, smiled. Chapter 3, Kicked by God. Huan silently retreated, ignoring them, and knocked on the door of Yujing and her daughter's room. Yujing stood at the door, glanced at the noisy 6th carriage, and asked softly, "Do you want me to come with you?" Huan was not tall, just over 1.8 meters, barely looking down at Yujing, who was 1.67 meters tall. He slightly parted his lips. "Come on." Huan turned and walked towards the carriage ahead. Yujing quickly followed. The number of deluxe sleeper compartments was the same as the regular sleeper compartments, 8 in total. The difference was that each deluxe sleeper compartment had a large bed and only accommodated 1 person, while the regular sleeper compartments had 4 beds. Huan pushed open the door, stepped over an oil tank, and found a few awkward footholds among a pile of metal parts before finally managing to sit down on his bed. Looking down from the bed, the floor was covered with all sorts of metal parts, and wrenches of varying lengths were stuck in an iron barrel cut from an oil tank. The carpet underfoot was also soaked with oil. There were also signs of violent cutting along the edges of the rooms on both sides, indicating that the 2 private rooms had been connected. Huan looked up and saw Yujing standing there in a daze. He narrowed his eyes. Yu Shuo seemed surprised. Yujing's calm expression changed slightly, and her eyes lit up. "Where did you get this?" Huan said coldly. "Whether you and your mother can stay depends on whether you can restore this motorcycle to its original state tonight." Yujing picked up the wheel under her feet, completely ignoring the oil stains on it that had eroded her short-sleeved shirt. "Kawasaki Ninja H2, this isn't a motorcycle, you can call it a land-based flying machine 14,000 revolutions per minute, do you know what that means?" Yujing suddenly turned her head and stared at him, asking. Huan was taken aback by her words, then asked suspiciously, "What does that mean?" He had ridden many motorcycles in his previous life, but they were all common models. He only rode this one because it looked particularly good. He really didn't know the brand or the specifications. He didn't expect Yu Jing to recognize it at a glance. When you twist the accelerator all the way, it feels like you've been kicked by God. Su Huan frowned. Just tell me if you can fix it. No problem. Yu Jing immediately agreed and went to the oil drum to find a suitable tool. She seemed even more eager than Su Huan. Su Huan didn't say anything and took out his log to observe Yu Jing. At first, things were relatively normal. Where's the rear suspension? Behind the panel on your left front. Where are the piston calipers? They should be somewhere around your feet. I don't see them. Why don't you look again? Half an hour later, things started to change. I'm really speechless. They're violently disassembling this kind of car and have even scratched the paint. What a waste. What a bastard. Su Huan, who was helping out, watched Yu Jing grit her teeth as she repaired the car while muttering curses. If it weren't for the fact that she was really good at her job and her jeans made her look really alluring, Su Huan would have strangled her right there. Get me a wrench. This one? No, the other one. This one? No, the one I just used. Never mind, I'll do it myself. Su Huan glanced at the 4 or 5 wrenches Yu Jing had just touched, his lips twitching. He didn't know if this woman was genuine or just pretending. The air of a highly qualified research talent she had before picking up the wrench vanished. She was more like one of those fiery, feisty mechanics from a wasteland repair shop in his past life. Her mouth chattered non-stop. But the results were remarkable. About 30–40% of the haphazardly dismantled parts on the ground were restored. This wasn't just finding treasure, it was like striking gold. While Yu Jing wasn't calling him, Su Huan pulled out his notebook and checked the repair personnel section on the armed train project page. He'd find 8th Master again in a while. The first phase of the armed train could then officially begin. December 17th, early winter, temperature 24 degrees Celsius, the temperature rose another degree. It seems there's still a long time before the deadline, but this is just a slow initial rise. Last night, Su Huan kept an eye on things for several hours and, finding that Yu Jing was indeed capable, went to sleep next door. Of course, not wanting to be gossiped about to his face was also a major factor. Clang, clang, the train glided slowly out of the tunnel and stopped in a suburb of Huan City. Looking around, there were verdant mountains, with various industrialized modern buildings interspersed in the valleys. The train stretched across the railway like a green iron python basking in the sun. Except for the noisy zombies on the train, everything was beautiful. The carriage door opened, and Su Huan stood at the door with a long wrench, looking around. He casually knocked twice on the iron door. The ear-piercing clanging sound echoed. The zombies on the train car screamed even louder, but after waiting for a long time, only one half-dead crawled out from under the train. His white shirt was torn to shreds, blood and mud mingled together, and half his face was missing. You don't seem like a local either, Su Huan said, jumping down and smashing a wrench down on the back of his head. With a thud, the zombie fell silent. Ling. 1 kill added today. Su Huan said with a strange, mechanical laugh. He didn't have a system, and killing zombies hadn't yielded any results yet, but life is about finding some amusement. Otherwise, he wouldn't have survived 4 years. Liang Quan calmly followed behind, holding a fire axe. He was clearly used to Su Huan's neuroticism. The two walked to the back of the train car, cautiously staying away from under the train. Seeing that nothing strange was crawling out, Liang Quan went forward and opened the door. Because it was an old-fashioned sightseeing train, the doors didn't have electronic interlocks or speed sensor locks, but retained a mechanical structure. It mainly relied on manual operation. Liang Quan pulled open the car door, revealing a group of haggard and tense faces inside. Upon seeing Su Huan, their expressions instantly turned to fear and disgust. Let's get to work, everyone come out. Su Huan maintained his basic courtesy with a smile. Seeing that there was no danger, the crowd gradually emerged and gathered in the open space. Ignoring the resentful and fearful gazes, Su Huan clapped his hands twice and said familiarly, same as always, bring back 3 portions of food and water, and 1 dose of medicine, and you can board. Today's special ticket is for tools, whether it's a drill, a chainsaw, or anything useful for repairing machinery, it will offset 1 ticket. Many people's expressions changed. But they dared not refuse, and could only stand in the crowd and mutter quietly. Before, we only needed 3 portions of food and water. Why is there an extra dose of medicine today? We're not even enough to avoid zombies. Where are we going to find so much food? A young man wearing a hoodie glanced at Su Huan, silently left the group, and began to explore. Chapter 4 Su Huan's kindness accumulates over time. Su Huan patiently explained, there's a cannery nearby, but it's uncertain how much food will be left. I certainly don't mind chatting with you a little longer, but some of you might miss your train tonight. The murmurs abruptly ceased. The crowd dispersed and began to walk out. 40-odd carriages, but only about 1,000 people. This already spoke volumes about Su Huan's character. If someone couldn't afford a ticket, he would truly leave them outside the train. Soon, almost all of the 1,000-odd people had left, leaving only a few moving slowly. A girl dawdled up to Su Huan. Su Huan narrowed his eyes, his tone amiable. Is there anything I can help you with? The girl fidgeted with her fingertips, hesitating. Could you? No. A rumble came from the girl's stomach. Her eyes instantly reddened, tears welling up, and she pleaded, I'm so hungry. Su Huan suddenly realized, oh, it's you. Last time, several people hadn't collected enough supplies, barely scraping together enough for a ticket. Without food, they would naturally go hungry. Su Huan took a piece of bread from his pocket and handed it to her. The girl immediately wolfed it down, finishing it in just a few bites after opening the bag. Su Huan also thoughtfully handed her a small 330 milliliters bottle of drinking water. After the girl finished drinking, she looked up and smiled sweetly. Brother Su, you're so kind. Oh, and she's quite a pretty girl. Su Huan wiped away the girl's tears and smiled happily. Remember to bring back 6 sets of supplies. After saying that, he ignored the girl's astonished expression and went back to the car to get tools. Liang Quan went to move the prepared metal sheets. Su Huan returned to the car and saw a figure lurking suspiciously in front of his door from afar. Looking at the familiar knitted sweater and full figure, he knew without guessing that it was Yu Jing's mother. Su Huan activated his silent walking skill. Standing behind the woman, only about 10 centimeters away, he could faintly feel the heat emanating from her body. Taking advantage of his height, Su Huan leaned over the woman's shoulder, watching her twist her fingers like a little girl. His voice was low and menacing. What are you doing here? He asked. The woman trembled, her legs gave way, and she lunged towards the door of the private room. Luckily, she was close enough to grab onto the door with her hands. The terror came so suddenly that she didn't even have time to utter a sound. Afraid she would fall too badly, Su Huan reached out and supported her waist. The woman then turned around and saw Su Huan. Seeing him didn't ease her fear, instead, it intensified it. Maintaining her awkward posture, she stammered, I wanted to see my daughter. She hasn't gone home all night. Oh, Su Huan felt his fingers sink into her soft hip. Click. The door unlocked, and Yu Jing, with her hair tied in a high ponytail, opened the door. The woman lost her balance and fell into Yu Jing's arms. Yu Jing hugged her mother, her dark, spirited phoenix eyes sweeping over them with a hint of confusion. Are you here to check the results? Su Huan acted as if nothing had happened. Get some tools, come with me. Yu Jing made way, and her mother scurried to the other side like a startled rabbit, avoiding Su Huan's amused gaze. The messy parts in the room had vanished, and the tools were neatly arranged on the table. The car leaned against the center of the room, its front wheels slightly to the left. The supercharger's air intakes bearing their fangs in the shadows, the honeycomb pattern on the inner walls resembling insect compound eyes. The air still carried the cold scent of engine oil mixed with leather, like the exhaust fumes of some giant beast. Yu Jing frowned and explained, it's restored, but the sound is off. There must be some minor issues with the engine, we need to check them one by one. Su Huan didn't seem to care. Just a few minor issues. Is it even more problematic than the chainsaw and fuel injection motorcycle modified by the motorcyclist? Even using the handbrake might get you crippled and then burned. He can handle such a dangerous thing, so what's a little safety in this? He simply replied with a motorcyclist's catchphrase, there are too many faulty things in this world. As long as it starts, that's enough. Since you say so, let's check it when we get back. Yu Jing paused for a moment, then said with relief. Su Huan first pushed this huge thing into the sightseeing carriage, where there were more empty seats. Then he led Yu Jing and welding tools to the front of the vehicle. Coming down from the front, they saw Liang Quan struggling to move a huge steel plate. The steel plate was a full 25 millimeters thick, V-shaped, and could cover the entire front of the vehicle. Huan had it welded at a factory a few days ago. Are you planning to install protective gear? Jing suddenly asked. Just as Huan was about to step forward, he turned back to look at her. Is there a problem? Jing calmly replied, if we're facing zombies or obstacles on the tracks, a shovel-shaped locomotive might be more effective. Huan's eyes lit up slightly. A good idea. Do you know how to do it? Jing walked to the locomotive, squatted down, and looked at it. It's simple. Just weld the steel plate at a 30-degree angle. It's just a bit troublesome. Then let's do it that way, Huan said resolutely. He needed this train to survive, and the armed modification couldn't be taken lightly. Quan, you lift it up. I'll weld. Jing, you go to the back and adjust the position. Let's try to finish it by noon. After Huan finished speaking, he picked up a welding rod, didn't even connect it to electricity, and directly touched it to the gap. Jing was stunned for a moment, and was about to remind him when the sparks almost blinded her. She looked again in disbelief. Huan clearly only had a welding clamp in his hand, without even a power source, and he was welding in midair. It was simply challenging her understanding. This is. First, calibrate the position. If you perform well, I'll tell you how to become an evolved being. Huan said calmly, his back to her. Jing looked at this mysterious man, her eyes flashing. Lift it up a bit more. If the angle is too low, it won't have the desired shoveling effect. Hey. Quan exhaled, lifting the heavy steel plate, his face turning red. After an hour, the group finally finished welding the steel plate. Looking at the front of the vehicle with its rough welding marks, Huan nodded in satisfaction. It's the apocalypse, who cares about looks? As long as it's powerful enough. Next, there are the windows. Weld the explosion-proof netting on the dining car, and today's mission will be complete. Quan patted his gloves, kicking up a cloud of dust, and pulled out a large pile of explosion-proof netting from carriage number 3, starting to cut it on the spot. It was difficult to connect electricity outside, which saved time. Huan just held the plug. Then Jing helped hold the explosion-proof netting while welding with her other hand. At first, it was a bit strange, but later the three of them developed a tacit understanding and worked extremely fast. Before 2 o'clock, the entire window of the dining car was welded with explosion-proof mesh. Chapter 5 Born North. Climbing onto the dining car, Huan luxuriously washed his hands again, pulled out a bottle of mineral water, and gulped it down. He then pulled out 2 more bottles and tossed them to Quan and Jing. Have some water, rest for a bit. The two drank water, slowly recovering their strength. Huan slumped onto the sofa, sweat pouring down his face. Quan, go turn on the air conditioning in the dining car. Don't use it in the other carriages. A few minutes later, cool air blew out from the air conditioner. Feeling the refreshing sensation of his pores opening up, Huan lazily gazed out the window. Although the explosion-proof netting divided the view outside into small squares, his mood actually improved. Ask whatever you want, while I'm in a good mood. Jing hesitated for a moment before asking, I want to know what's really happening in the world. Huan slightly raised his eyelids. She had really hit the nail on the head. Quite clever indeed. I don't know much about the apocalypse either, but I'll just tell you a little bit. 8 days ago, an unknown energy appeared. Let's call it pan energy, referring to any unknown energy. This energy permeates every corner like air, blocking most of our known means of communication. Huan looked around, picked up a small radio from the shelf behind him, and randomly tuned it to a few channels. Only a crackling dial tone was heard. Seeing the eagerness in Jing's eyes, Huan simply tossed the radio to her, letting her try it herself. But no matter how she fiddled with it, she couldn't receive any meaningful sound. I have a few more radios in my room. You can try them yourself later if you don't believe me, Huan said calmly. Jing wasn't doubting Huan, but she was unwilling to accept this result. She sighed inwardly and put down the radio. Then where are we going? The north. It's colder there, and there's room to survive. But I have a feeling that the current high temperatures are just the beginning. Our only chance of survival is this train. If the apocalypse continues, this will be our only refuge. After these words, both of their faces darkened. So we need to be prepared for a long-term survival on the train. I not only need to collect supplies and upgrade the armor, but I also need to build a water purification and circulation system, an air circulation system, a farm in the carriages, a defense system, an attack system, and a complete medical and supply system. Su Huan paused. Of course, a building isn't built in a day, and a train won't be fully armed overnight. I'm saying this so you can prepare yourselves mentally. There was another reason why the train kept heading north, which Su Huan didn't mention. In his past life, he always had a feeling of being driven, like a giant hand, driving them to keep evolving, to keep heading north. Once they stopped, they would face an even more terrifying disaster. As for what lay at the northernmost point, he had no idea. But to survive better, he had to prepare for the worst, like a hibernating bear, to fatten itself up and become stronger. To make the train's armor thicker and its firepower more ferocious. What he needed to do wasn't just escape death in the face of crisis, but to bite back more fiercely. Su Huan narrowed his eyes and raised the mineral water bottle in his hand. So, let's toast to surviving until now and to living even better in the future. The two raised their hands in response. After a moment, seeing that neither of them intended to speak, Su Huan raised an eyebrow. I thought you were going to ask me about the evolved beings. Liang Quan seemed not to hear, while Yu Jing calmly said, we'll let you know when you need us. Su Huan smiled. Right now, the most important thing was to arm the train. As for the evolved beings team, that could be postponed. Focusing his mind, Su Huan concentrated on his own thoughts. Energy supplier LV1 universal energy conversion, LV1 energy compression, LV1 universal energy perception. This wasn't a system, but rather information etched into the genes after evolution. It didn't require learning. The moment evolution was complete, the evolved being could instinctively use and understand these abilities, like swallowing or raising a hand. Like a lion cub swinging its paw, it might not know the consequences, but it wouldn't forget the action of swinging. If one had a bracelet produced by Deep Blue data, some basic data could also be seen. For example, the total energy in his body, the recovery speed, etc., but Su Huan sold them after playing with them for 2 days in his previous life. He didn't want his data to be secretly studied by a group of people. Although they were all things that fluctuated at any time, they were too dangerous in the apocalypse. Moreover, losing accurate data wouldn't affect anything. Although evolved beings couldn't know their own body data exactly, they could sense their general state, such as how long a certain skill could last, how long it would take for general energy to recover, and whether they could withstand a certain skill. They had an estimate. And this feeling came faster and more directly than data. Do you need lunch prepared? A woman's weak voice interrupted Su Huan's thoughts. Looking up, he saw Yu Jing's mother, standing there quietly, both calm and uneasy. Her personality was the complete opposite of Yu Jing's. Yu Jing and Yu Jing had already gone to rest. What's your name? Yu. Prepare the perishable food in the refrigerator first. Su Huan gave a light instruction and got up to walk towards the back carriage. A somewhat disheveled figure stood outside carriage number 5. The black high-waisted jeans were worn and tattered, and she wore a large black hoodie, which looked like she'd gotten her hands on somewhere. She carried a black backpack with difficulty, her eyes full of flattery. Oh, isn't this our little beauty? You've already collected 6 sets of supplies so quickly? Su Huan never hesitated to smile at his valued passengers. The young woman looked slightly embarrassed, but seeing Su Huan smile rekindled her hope. She tentatively said, Brother Su, the supplies I collected might not be enough. Could you perhaps? Su Huan's smile faded, and his brow furrowed. How much short? The girl took off her backpack and held it up with both hands, anxiously awaiting Su Huan's judgment. Su Huan dumped everything out of the backpack. Quite a few items. 2 portions of bread, 4 potatoes, 10 cloves of garlic, that'll be a day's worth of food, oh wow, and potato chips too. But these don't keep you full, 4 bags for 1 meal. Add 5 packs of instant noodles, and a 4-pack of sausages, that's only 2.5 portions of food. Su Huan counted, his tone unfriendly. The girl quickly pointed to a few other items, and that one, didn't they say a tool can replace a train ticket? Su Huan picked up a screwdriver with a playful expression. You want to use this instead of a train ticket? The girl's smile froze, but she still nodded reluctantly. Su Huan's smile remained, but his eyes had turned completely cold. You mean you want to use a broken screwdriver to exchange for a precious train ticket that will allow you to sleep peacefully during the apocalypse? Are you stupid, or am I? Yu, who was washing dishes nearby, felt a chill and silently continued working with her head down. The girl's face turned pale. The thought of being kicked off the train and facing those terrifying zombies in an unfamiliar place made her tremble, and large tears rolled down her cheeks. She pleaded in a sobbing voice, "But I really have no choice, Brother Sue. As long as you let me on the train, I'll do whatever you say." Chapter 6: Buying tickets and getting on the bus. You'll listen to everything? Yes, everything. Absolute obedience? Absolutely. The girl vigorously wiped her sweaty face, revealing her fair skin. She was quite confident in her looks. Huan squinted at her, scrutinizing her. "Come up and wash the dishes first." Arriving at the dining car, only Yu was there dealing with the leftover dishes from yesterday. Huan said calmly, "Go tidy up the room." Yu turned around in surprise, seeing another girl behind Huan. She gave her a complicated look, wiped her hands, and stepped aside. The girl hadn't wiped away her tears, but her heart was already enveloped in immense happiness and surprise. She quickly took the dishcloth. "How old are you?" Huan continued to ask. 18. "I have my ID in my bag." There weren't many dishes in the sink, and the girl finished washing them quickly, anxiously awaiting Huan's next command, her ears turning red as she seemed lost in thought. "It's good that you're an adult, you can take care of yourself now. Get off the bus then," Huan said calmly. "Huh?" The girl was struck dumb, frozen in place. After a long pause, she forced a smile. "Didn't we agree on everything?" "Brother Sue, don't scare me." Huan asked in surprise. "Agreed on what?" "You only have 2.5 portions of supplies. I'm being merciful by letting you wash a few dishes to make up the remaining half portion, as repayment of my debt. But if you want to get on the bus, you still need 3 portions of supplies." He then put a finger to his lips, his tone dangerous. "You don't expect to get something for nothing, do you?" Tears welled up again. "I can do so much more." "What can you do? What are your hobbies?" "I can." The girl hesitated. "I like to travel. I've been to many places. I can dance, my English is very good, and I'm a blogger. Many people like me." Huan frowned impatiently. "What did you study?" "I didn't go to university, but I can shoot videos and earn much more than university students." "So you mean you can do photography and editing?" "I just shoot the videos, the rest is outsourced, but I can learn. I'll learn very quickly." Huan leaned back on the sofa, squinting at her. "If someone knocks on the door wanting to get on the train, do you choose to ignore it or open the door?" The girl hesitated, about to answer, but then felt something was wrong. If she answered no, why would Huan have taken her in? And wouldn't she seem too unkind? If she answered open, it would obviously cause trouble for the train. So the correct answer was to report it to him? Seeing the girl's conflicted expression, Huan completely lost patience. "All right, get off." The answer to this question wasn't important. The important thing was to give a quick answer. In the apocalypse, both good and bad people can survive. Only those who are neither good nor bad, those whose minds are unclear, die the fastest. When something happens, others have already made a decision and started implementing it, while you're still hesitating about trivial matters. If you don't die, who will? The girl dared not say another word, looking utterly devastated as she got off the train, lingering around it, unwilling to leave. Huan showed no pity. He needed people, but he needed people of value, even if they were decisive. Of course, someone pretty enough to provide both physical and emotional services would be fine, but the girl had a pointed face and thin legs, not his type. She wasn't even as fun as the timid Aunt Yu. After dismissing the girl, Huan, with a name tag tucked under his arm and the roster in hand, went to the 6th carriage. It was noticeably hotter here. After all, it consumed electricity, and until Huan's abilities were fully developed, every bit of energy saved was precious. The carriage was filled with a jumble of clothes and reeked of foot odor and urine. Fortunately, there was a toilet. A quick scan revealed nothing dirty except for some plastic sheet covers. "Tisk, still full of energy," Huan remarked, opening a window for ventilation. Huan approached, carrying a fire axe. Huan chuckled, "Don't be so nervous. We're here to collect tickets, not to collect lives." Huan nodded heavily, gripping his axe tightly. "I understand." Huan then opened the train door, hanging the sign next to him with 4 large characters, "Buy a ticket and board." "Come on over, everyone," Buy your tickets and get on the train. Su Huan called out, finding a chair and settling in comfortably. He loved this feeling of getting something for nothing. Passengers hiding around the train cautiously emerged from various corners. They were all seasoned veterans trained by Su Huan, knowing exactly how to avoid being discovered by zombies. If they accidentally attracted zombies, they were on their own. Don't expect Su Huan to open the door and let them in. The train was far more important than people. Soon, passengers carrying bags of supplies gathered at the door of the 6th carriage. Why is it the 6th carriage today? Wasn't it always the 5th? A man in overalls asked. Su Huan glanced at the man, who looked somewhat familiar. He took the backpack from him and patiently explained, "This carriage is going to be cleared out and won't be open to the public anymore. It'll be used as an exchange carriage. A 10-pound bag of rice, good stuff. Okay, you can have 3 sets of supplies." Receiving tangible supplies made Su Huan even happier. "Since you're a regular passenger, I have a small job for you. If you do it well, you can get 1 set of supplies for free." The man in overalls' eyes lit up. "What kind of job?" Su Huan pointed inside the carriage. "You just need to clear out all the trash and then sweep it clean." The man in overalls quickly took the backpack and excitedly went to work. Hearing this, the man behind him handed over his supplies and immediately asked, "Is there any more work?" Su Huan glanced at him. He looked unfamiliar, probably someone who had boarded a couple of days ago. "No, next." A woman with a troubled expression handed over a huge package covered by a black garbage bag, her hands bruised and purple from the pressure. Su Huan took it suspiciously. "Wow, it's quite heavy." Opening the outer plastic bag, they found an air pump inside, weighing about 20 kilograms. It was truly impressive that a woman could carry something like that so far. Afraid Su Huan wouldn't accept it, the woman quickly said, "My husband used to be a carpenter. This air pump can even be used with a nail gun. I brought it along, it's all on it." Su Huan glanced at her. She seemed like a diligent person. "Alright, you've passed the test. Go in and clean this carriage thoroughly, every nook and cranny. Make sure the windows are sparkling clean. If you do a good job, your ticket will be free tomorrow." The woman thanked him profusely. Soon, Su Huan's carriage was piled high with supplies: rice, flour, diesel, cigarettes, alcohol, sugar, tea, daily necessities, medical equipment, production tools, all sorts of odds and ends. This was much faster than gathering supplies himself. Just as Su Huan was happily collecting tickets, a group of unfamiliar faces approached. They seemed to be a family, 3 men and 2 women, with a child. The train was frequently spotted by locals, who often mistook it for a government relief effort. "Dad, look, there's still a train running." "I knew it. How could such a big country collapse so easily because of a few viruses?" The speaker was a bespectacled man with somewhat awkward features. His father, with graying temples and wearing a navy blue jacket, perked up the moment he saw the train. "Quick, go ask." But the people around him just looked at him coldly, offering no answer. The bespectacled man sensed something was wrong. He approached the carriage and saw Su Huan. The man looked Su Huan up and down, then tentatively asked, "Is this train a government relief effort?" Chapter 7 Metal Manipulator. Su Huan gave a perfectly timed bitter smile. "There's no rescue. We're just a bunch of refugees. Who could have imagined the world would turn out like this? We thought it would be colder up north, enough to freeze those living dead to death. There's not much food left on the bus. Everyone, get off and find some. Do you want to get on?" The bespectacled man glanced at the silent crowd around him and hesitated. Su Huan continued to persuade him, "There are more people on the bus. If something happens, we can help each other." In a short while, his family also gathered around. The old woman, her face full of wrinkles, said, "Get on the bus, get on the bus. We can all stick together for warmth. It's just that the tickets." The old woman's eyes darted around, a pitiful look in them. "Our whole family finally escaped with great difficulty. We didn't bring much money. We only have 1 bus parked outside. I wonder if it can cover the ticket price?" Su Huan cursed the old woman inwardly. Did she think he was blind? He was hiding jewelry with her daughter-in-law in the back just now. But he showed no sign of it on his face. Instead, he winked a couple of times, his eyes slightly red, and sighed, "It must be tough for you traveling with your family. I'll pay for the tickets myself, but please don't tell anyone, or the train conductor will punish me." The old lady smiled, her wrinkles widening. "Young man, you're such a good person. Don't worry, our whole family is very well behaved and won't say a word." Su Huan smiled and opened the register. "Just leave your name and you can board. You're in carriage 20. The bespectacled man felt something was off and, being cautious, gave a false name. After noting down their names, Su Huan said, "Just go inside and walk to the back. It might be a bit crowded, but you're quite old, so please ask them to make way for you." "Yes, yes, good young man," the old lady praised repeatedly. The family, unsuspecting, happily boarded the carriage. Only after they had boarded did Su Huan sneer. This family was no pushover. The young woman pleaded with him for help several times, while the old woman's youngest son had a fierce look on his face and his hands were always in his pockets. The most hateful thing was that brat. He'd stolen a bag of potato chips as soon as he boarded, his technique incredibly practiced, clearly not a first-time occurrence. And what's more, it was his favorite flavor. Even so, Su Huan easily let them board. He was actually somewhat expectant. In isolated and resource-scarce places, moral boundaries crumble faster. Of course, Su Huan was the main factor contributing to the current atmosphere on the train. He exacerbated the imbalance of resources. Su Huan looked at the group of strangely dressed older passengers and said with a forced smile, "I've already paid for your tickets. If you have any complaints, just say so." Everyone shook their heads. Newcomers board for free, but the next day, once they arrived at their new destination, they would have to repay the conductor's kindness many times over. Otherwise, they would be kicked off the train. The train was already miles away, far from their familiar surroundings. Leaving the train now would basically mean certain death. The delivery of supplies continued until the sun was setting. Suddenly, Su Huan saw a familiar figure and froze. "Eighth Master. Can we get on the train?" a young woman in a short-sleeved shirt from the orphanage asked. Su Huan's eyes were fixed on the person in front of her. A young man in a black shirt sat in a wheelchair, his clear black and white eyes still retaining a metallic luster. The core of constructing the armed train actually had two parts. One was Su Huan, who provided various energy sources, and the other was Eighth Master, who could reconnect the broken tracks. He was the most comprehensive metal manipulator Su Huan had ever seen in his past life. All types of alloys could be molded and manipulated at his beck and call. He had originally planned to find him after finishing his work, but unexpectedly, they met here. What a strange fate. Su Huan became increasingly confident in his train plan. Seeing that Su Huan didn't reply, the woman gritted her teeth and asked again. Su Huan licked his lips. "No problem, get on the train." A hint of joy finally appeared on the woman's face. She pushed the wheelchair to the side of the train, gritted her teeth at the height difference, and gripped both sides of the wheelchair. The heavy wheelchair was lifted up. Everyone was somewhat surprised. Su Huan, watching from the side, saw it clearly, and the metallic gleam in the boy's eyes intensified. "Go and lend a hand," Su Huan said to Lian Quan beside him. In his previous life, when he met Kizile Oba, the other party was already a second-tier professional in the manipulator field. He only knew that the other party came from the welfare home in Huan City. Kizile Oba always kept other things to himself. As for this young woman, he had never seen her before. She must be dead. Kizile Oba was most famous for taking in many orphans from the apocalypse and for frequently helping others, which led to his reputation as a saint. No one understood him, including Su Huan. In the apocalypse, everyone was in danger. Who would want to be a saint? But when Kizile Oba was mentioned, everyone would give him a thumbs up and respectfully call him Master Ba. Because no one knew if Master Ba's saintly radiance would one day shine up on them. And Su Huan was lucky. He was someone who had been blessed by Master Ba's saintly radiance twice. Lian Quan stepped forward and took the wheelchair from the woman's hands. By this time, there weren't many people outside, and Su Huan planned to close the door after collecting this batch of tickets. Suddenly, a slight muffled thud caught his attention. He looked up in confusion, but the sound disappeared. However, for some reason, he felt a chill and subconsciously activated his level 1 general perception. There was nothing unusual within a meter. Paranoid. Su Huan muttered, just about to call for the next passenger, when a scream suddenly rang out. Su Huan subconsciously looked up, his pupils shrinking to pinpoints. A beast the size of a medium-sized dog swept over his head, directly attacking a passenger who was about to board. One bite, and blood splattered. The beast was hairless, as if it had been skinned alive, its bright red flesh exposed to the air, its veins meandering like exposed pipes, its scarlet eyes slightly narrowed, scanning for its next target. Then, its gaze met Huan's. An evolved beast, a bloodhound. Thank goodness he was collecting tickets inside the bus. If this thing attacked and touched you outside, you'd be dead. Huan gasped and hissed, "Close the door." At the same time, he slammed the window shut. Bang! Screech. The sharp claws scraped against the tempered glass, making a piercing sound. Several passengers scrambled up and ran back to the back of the carriage, peering nervously at the bloodhound outside. "That thing won't come after us, will it?" an older passenger said, trembling. "Shut up. Sue is closest to that dog. If it's going to bite, it'll bite him," someone said viciously. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 Welcome to the Apocalypse. Yes, it's a dog-eat-dog world, both sides will be injured, someone muttered under their breath. Behind the group, an old man watched the situation outside intently and asked the person next to him in a low voice, "What do you think?" Kozie frowned. "Those mutated dogs are very strong. They can easily kill ordinary zombies, and their sense of smell is extremely keen. Last time when I was looking for supplies, I was almost spotted by one. I had to run 3 kilometers to shake it off. But Huan's ability is very strange, so I'm not sure." The old man looked somewhat solemn. "You can't beat that mutated dog either?" Kozie narrowed his eyes. "It depends on the environment and the timing, but in this confined space, I only have a 30% chance of success." "A 30% chance of killing it? That's quite a lot." The old man breathed a sigh of relief and muttered to himself. Kozie coughed lightly. "A 30% chance of surviving." Seeing that it couldn't break the car window anytime soon, the bloodhound pushed off with its paws and suddenly lunged towards the car door. Its mouth was full of fangs, revealing its ferocious nature. But he was met with Huan's cold eyes and raised index finger. Bang! The bloodhound flew backward. After a moment, it shook its head, staggered to its feet, its entire jaw mangled, but it looked even more ferocious and terrifying. Hairhead! Roar! The pain extinguished its last remaining beastly instincts, and its hysterical howl sent shivers down one's spine. It charged madly onto the train. Bang! Huan's lips twitched as he looked at the dent on the outer wall of the carriage. That was a 3mm steel plate. The sound attracted Yu Jing and her daughter in the carriage ahead. Liang Quan, carrying an axe, was about to step forward when Huan called out from behind, "Don't go over there, back up." Huan said calmly. Bang bang, crack. The carriage shook violently. Watching the bloodhound squeeze onto the train, Huan's lips curled into a smile. Underneath the train, he truly couldn't handle this thing. Its vitality was tenacious, and its attack power was ferocious. But on the train, this was his home turf. Boom! The massive body of the bloodhound flew backward and crashed into the door. Instantly, glass shattered, the door twisted, and blood mixed with glass shards splattered backward. Crash! The sound paused for a moment, followed by the bloodhound's painful howl. These evolved beasts were extremely resilient. Even with fatal wounds, they could struggle for a while. The boy in the wheelchair stared at Huan, who stood alone in the corridor facing the bloodhound, a strange light flashing in his eyes. Because of his disability, he had seen many wicked people, but none compared to those he had encountered in the days following the apocalypse. Fear, greed, desire, rage. Only in Huan did he see something different. Oba raised a hand. The metal door frames, twisted by the bloodhound's impact, came to life like pythons, creaking and groaning as they coiled around the dying bloodhound. "I can't hold on much longer, you," Oba said. Huan looked at the familiar metal vines, a smirk playing on his lips. A cold blue arc of electricity extended from the steel plate on the sole of his shoe, striking the struggling bloodhound directly along the vines. Taking advantage of its stiffened state, he raised a finger. Bang! The bloodhound's head snapped back, mangled beyond recognition. Oba stood frozen in place. For some reason, he had a strange feeling that the two of them had worked together many times before. Their understanding was perfect without needing to speak. Phew. Huan let out a long breath. Although he had only been busy for a short while, His clothes were already soaked with sweat. He turned around and cast an admiring glance at Kiziloba, who was sitting in a wheelchair. "Su Huan." Kiziloba hesitated for a moment, then said shyly, "Kiziloba." Su Huan flashed an exaggerated smile. "Welcome to the apocalypse, Zioba." The passenger, whose face was splattered with dog blood, stared wide-eyed. He hadn't expected the ferocious bloodhound to be dealt with so easily by Su Huan. Seeing the deformed carriage door rammed by the bloodhound, the initial restlessness of the crowd instantly subsided. What the hell was the point of fighting? They might as well just work for the train conductor. Gozichi and the old men were equally silent. What type of evolved human is he? A hint of resentment flashed in Gozichi's eyes. He had previously thought that becoming an evolved human would easily destroy Su Huan's rule, but today he suddenly realized the vast difference between himself and the other. It was like comparing heaven and earth. That bloodhound was far superior to him in both strength and speed. Yet, it couldn't even retaliate against Su Huan's bizarre methods. They were both evolved humans who had awakened superpowers, so why was there such a huge difference? The old man beside him sighed and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't be impulsive. Wait a little longer, figure out Su Huan's abilities, and don't alert him." Gozichi gritted his teeth and pulled down his hoodie. "I know." Liang Quan walked over from behind, a hint of fear on his face. "What was that thing?" "It's fiercer than a bear. A bloodhound, something evolved from an ordinary wild dog. It's much stronger than a bear. I hit it so hard, and it's still struggling for so long," Su Huan said, narrowing his eyes, his smile fading. This little incident served as a reminder. With his current strength, it would be difficult to be invincible in the early stages of the apocalypse. If he didn't want to be caught off guard, he would have to accumulate strength using the advantage of his rebirth. In the early stages, power donors were still too powerless against evolved beasts. The armed train project needed to be accelerated, and personal evolution needed to be put on the agenda as soon as possible. Composing himself, Su Huan stood up and said, "Check yourself for any wounds. The chance of mutation is much lower now, but the incubation period is also longer. Of course, except for evolved individuals." Su Huan's last sentence was directed at Kiziloba. Kiziloba's eyes suddenly lit up. Why? Because evolved individuals are equivalent to having successfully evolved, they've already passed a mutation stage. Yujing, standing beside him, seemed thoughtful. "Then is there any way to become an evolved individual?" Kiziloba immediately asked. Su Huan gave him a suspicious look, then looked at the tense woman behind him and narrowed his eyes. "How long have you been infected?" The woman opened her mouth, hesitating. Kiziloba quickly replied, "About an hour." "That's good, there's still a chance. You all go wait in the dining car. Zioba, you patch up the hole in carriage number 6 first," Su Huan said. Kiziloba turned back to comfort her. "Sister Xingzi, you go ahead." After the others left, the hope in Zioba's eyes subsided, and he said earnestly, "If Sister Xingzi survives, I'll consider it an oath of life to you." As expected of 8th Master, so generous, Su Huangsun's lips curled up. But her face remained calm as she said, "I didn't say 100%, just that there's a chance." Chapter 9 Blood Resonance. Su Huan crouched down, pulled a dagger from his calf, and began cutting the bloodhound's skin. "A chance is enough." A metallic glint appeared in Kizioba's eyes. He raised his hand, and the twisted metal doors and windows quickly returned to normal. Su Huan looked up. "Is the energy enough? If so, seal it all off. It should be fine." With that, the metal binding the bloodhound flew into the air, heading towards the window frame, transforming into a metal plate that sealed the entire window. The moment the window closed, Su Huan was enveloped in a sense of security again, though not as intensely as before. A mere 3 mm thick steel plate couldn't provide him with sufficient security. Su Huan stood up, holding something he'd pulled from the bloodhound's body. He randomly grabbed a bottle of mineral water from a nearby pile of supplies, took a large gulp, and then poured the remaining half bottle onto the bloody mass of flesh in his hand. The crimson blood washed away, revealing the object's true form. It was the bloodhound's heart. Kizioba stared thoughtfully at the heart in his hand. The two arrived at the dining car, and Kizioba's expression changed drastically upon seeing the scene inside. "What happened to Sister Xingzi?" Yujing frowned and asked. "She collapsed as soon as she came in. She's still conscious, but her face is pale, very similar to the signs of zombie mutation." Qiziloba turned her gaze to Su Huan beside her. Su Huan crouched down, looking at the weakened Xingzi, and calmly said, "Now there's a way that can not only heal your injuries but also potentially make you an evolved being with superpowers. The price is that you might die. Want to try?" Xingzi stared blankly into Su Huan's eyes. She still couldn't see any emotion in them. They radiated an aura that commanded respect. Looking at Qiziloba beside her, Xingzi's reddened eyes lit up. "How do we do it?" Su Huan held up the bloodhound's heart in front of her and said seriously, "Eat it." The scene in the dining car was eerie. A group of people nervously huddled in a circle, while a woman covered in blood resolutely gnawed on the heart in her hand. Only the faint gnawing sounds filled the car. The atmosphere inexplicably became sinister. Su Huan leaned back on the sofa, watching this scene with interest. There are generally two ways to become an evolved being. One is to slowly come into contact with recently deceased zombies, accumulate general energy, and then quietly evolve when a certain critical point is reached. The other is much more direct, like Xingzi, by gnawing on the heart of an evolved beast. This accumulates the general energy in the body to the critical value in one go. The advantage is speed. The disadvantage is that turning into a zombie is also fast. When she had eaten half of it, Xingzi seemed less weak, and her gnawing speed increased even more. After finishing the last bite, her eyes were shrouded in a white haze, as if a film had formed, and she collapsed to the ground. Qiziloba looked at Su Huan nervously. Su Huan shrugged. "You see, there's nothing I can do. The rest depends on whether she can withstand it. Anyway, Xingzi was a freebie. If she becomes an evolved being, he'll have made a profit. Even if she dies, it's not a loss. It's just an evolved beast heart, it's not that important." Thinking of this, Su Huan subconsciously shifted his gaze to Lian Quan. He had observed Lian Quan's performance over this period. In Su Huan's mind, the first hurdle had been passed. He was already on the internal member list. He glanced at the thermometer on the wall. It had soared to 27 degrees Celsius. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, "The temperature is rising really fast. It'll probably reach 28 or 29 degrees in the afternoon. Lian Quan, go turn on the air conditioning." Lian Quan got up and went to the front of the car. 5 minutes later, cool air blew into the VIP dining car. So, the way to become an evolved being is to accumulate enough universal energy? Yu Jing suddenly looked up at Su Huan and said, a hint of confirmation in her eyes. Snap. Su Huan snapped his fingers. Correct. Absorbing universal energy promotes biological evolution. Whether it's flowers, trees, or cats and dogs, they can all evolve, just like the evolved beast just now, the bloodhound. And you've seen the result of failed evolution, becoming a zombie, capable of infecting others. But zombies can also evolve. So, there was a theory in his past life that those who became zombies were just playing a resurrection game of evolution. He had heard too many rumors like this, which seemed true but were actually false, and there was no need to tell them. So, zombies and evolved beasts have a lot of universal energy in their bodies. With frequent contact, some people can activate their abilities and gain powerful powers, but note, only some people. Most are infected and become new zombies. Su Huan said seriously. Qiziloba also listened attentively. Although he was also an evolved being, his understanding of the apocalypse, universal energy, and evolved beings was far inferior to Su Huan's. From those few words, everyone could tell that Su Huan had presented a complete and logical conceptual system, not just simple speculation. Yu Jing didn't press Su Huan about how he obtained this information. Her beautiful phoenix eyes swept over Xingzi. She had heard it clearly. Long-term, frequent, none of these words matched the method Xingzi had just used. Her method of rapidly absorbing omnipotent energy is called blood resonance. Perhaps sensing her confusion, Su Huan slowly explained. Oh. Yu Jing responded indifferently. Su Huan felt a little uncomfortable and looked up in surprise, only to see Yu Jing staring at him with a strange, inquisitive gaze. It wasn't like a woman looking at a man, but more like a researcher encountering an interesting subject. How? More than 10 minutes passed, and Xingzi, who was lying on the ground, suddenly sat up. Everyone was startled, and Lian Quan subconsciously stood up to reach for his axe. Only Su Huan smiled when he saw the non-reflective membrane in Xingzi's eyes. He walked over to her, squatted down, and extended his palm. Welcome to the armed train. Xingzi stared at Su Huan for a long while before extending her hand, managing to squeeze out 2 words, "Thank you." If you feel dizzy, you can try turning off your visual analysis and carefully recalling the information in your memory, Huan reminded her. It seems like that? The lifeless membrane in Xingzi's eyes gradually disappeared, reflecting Huan's image. Huan snapped his fingers, a smirk playing on his lips. Correct, you've arrived in the world of evolved beings. By the way, what's your full name again? Wanxing, Xing as in apricot blossoms in spring rain. Huan, Huan as in rebirth. You can also call me train conductor, boss, head, brother Huan, it doesn't matter what you call me. But you need to understand one thing, as long as you're on the train, you have to listen to me. I'll only say this once. Huan's tone was calm, but it carried an undeniable chill. Chapter 10 Evolvers. This wasn't just a message to Wanxing, but to everyone in the carriage. Oba, sitting beside her, showed no change in expression. Although he sensed Huan wasn't as simple as he appeared, one should know how to repay kindness. Wanxing paused, then pursed her lips and said, "Okay." Huan smiled with satisfaction. He liked obedient people. The team-building progress had far exceeded his expectations. An unintentional flap of wings had changed many things. The steel dragon groaned softly on the tracks, the last vestiges of twilight crushed beneath its wheels. The armed train quietly departed when in city, heading towards a steel plant 30 kilometers away. The lights, encased in sheet metal, shone like melted sugar cubes, casting a warm yellow glow on the rusty windows. Huan's pen moved swiftly across his notebook, ticking off railway repair and material collection. These were some of the key conditions for the armed train that he had previously listed. Closing his notebook, Huan gazed at the deepening darkness outside the window and quickly drew the curtains. Anything glowing in the night was either prey or bait. Yu was flipping luncheon meat in a frying pan with a fork, the oil sizzling and crackling. Oba whispered beside him, "Sister Xingzi, is your hand better?" Wanxing, seeing the worry in Oba's eyes, remembered that her arm had been bitten by a zombie. Rolling up her sleeve, a thin scar was visible on her fair forearm, the faint teeth marks almost hidden in the scab. "It healed so quickly, it seems evolution promotes cell growth," Yujing exclaimed in surprise. Evolution enhances the physical attributes of evolved individuals in every way, but physical strengthening is the domain of defenders, not gatherers, Huan said, as he unceremoniously picked up a sizzling piece of luncheon meat from the pan and put it in his mouth. Feeling the aroma of the meat mixed with a perfect amount of salt swirling in his mouth, Huan felt his energy recovery speed increase by a third. "Collector, you just mentioned visual analysis?" Yujing asked thoughtfully. "More accurately, it's level 1 visual analysis." "Wanxing, tell me what you think," Huan said. The reflection in Wanxing's eyes disappeared again, revealing a stark black and white, almost blank, state. After a moment of contemplation, she said, "When energy floods into my eyes, the world turns a dark gray, and then some points of light appear, but I can't touch most of them right now. That's because you haven't learned advanced decomposition yet. Once you learn that skill, you can dismantle most common objects." "Is it a skill?" "You can think of it that way. Evolvers can train their skills through special methods, and then form professions through different skill combinations." Huan seemed to suddenly realize something and tapped his forehead with 2 fingers. "Yujing, go and have Lion Quan find a place to park the car for the night, and also bring over that bloodhound carcass." "Okay." 10 minutes later, the train entered an unnamed tunnel. With a slight tremor, it stopped. Lion Quan emerged from the front of the train. "Just get it to carriage number 2, Lian Quan replied, and soon returned carrying a blood-soaked dog. Huan had already directed several people to spread a plastic sheet on the carpet in the sightseeing carriage. Bang! Lian Quan threw the dog down, causing the carriage to shudder slightly. Yujing quickly estimated its weight and was secretly astonished. The dog didn't look large, but it weighed about the same as a lean domestic pig. Wanxing, looking at the corpse on the ground, suddenly exclaimed softly, "I think I can touch this light spot." "Then let's try it." Huan pondered to himself. With the presence of a decomposer in the team, the speed of evolution would definitely increase significantly. Some corresponding plans could also be accelerated or advanced simultaneously. 20 minutes later, everyone looked curiously at the transparent crystal the size of a fingernail in Wanxing's hand. "This is the pan energy crystal. Cultivating with it is faster than contact with zombies, and it's safer. These zombies outside that haven't evolved, that is, in their embryonic state, can yield about half the size of this. Huan introduced. Collector. I see, that's what it means. It can collect pain energy from other organisms. Jing suddenly understood. Huan stretched. There are 5 types of evolvers, and we already have 3 here. Seeing everyone looking at him, Oba bluntly said, I can manipulate metal, but I don't know what type. Manipulator, Huan said calmly. The 5 types are energy supplier, manipulator, collector, manufacturer, and defender. Ignoring the complex looks in their eyes, Huan continued, the characteristic of a power sourcer is to generate energy and then convert it into various forms of energy to power machinery and electronics. The characteristic of a collector is the ability to extract a general energy from zombies, plants, or mutated beasts into easily portable and absorbable crystals, and to collect some unique materials found in the apocalypse. A manipulator can manipulate a certain element, for example, a metal manipulator can control metal. A creator can use their body's general energy to erode matter, altering its properties and making subtle adjustments. A defender's combat factor allows them to rapidly advance their abilities through combat. Each type of evolver's characteristics are unique, even after multiple advancements. Fearing they wouldn't understand, Huan only gave a general overview of the categories of evolved beings. In reality, the information about evolved beings was far more extensive than that. Different forces developed specialized potions, training methods, and intricate evolutionary paths. Huan had heard of dozens of such paths alone. Any single piece of information could potentially create a top-tier powerhouse, but these were all Huan's precious assets, and naturally, he couldn't just casually reveal them. I should take some time to write this down and calculate the timing, see if I can intercept a couple of opportunities. A thoughtful look appeared in Huan's eyes. What should we do next? Oba suddenly asked. Do you want to ask about long-term goals or immediate goals? Both. The long-term goal is to arm our mobile fortress, escape the high-temperature zone, and head north. You saw it during the day. Those beasts aren't something we can kill with our bare hands. Even evolved beings need time to develop. As for short-term goals, eat, sleep. What about you? Huan countered. A hint of age-appropriate confusion finally appeared on the boy's usually calm face. The headmaster is dead, the orphanage is gone. I don't know, then do you believe me? Huan's smile faded, and he asked seriously. Oba looked into Huan's cold eyes. His instincts told him this wasn't a good person. But his father had said that one should be grateful and keep one's word. I believe you. Chapter 11 Armed Train Phase 1. Don't worry, I won't sell you out. However, resources are limited, everyone on the train needs to work, and anyone boarding from now on will need my permission, Huan reminded him meaningfully. In his past life, Oba had adopted many orphans from the apocalypse. He could accept Oba's saintly nature, but only within the limits permitted by Oba, to stabilize the team's morale. He didn't want his well-maintained armored train to become a mobile orphanage. Alright, let's talk about what we need to do next. Huan clapped his hands, attracting everyone's attention. We'll stay here until tomorrow morning, then go to the steel mill to get a batch of steel to reinforce the train. Huan's gaze fell on Jing. I need you to design a preliminary plan for the train's modification. The modification will cover all the carriages, and the goal is to withstand a large zombie horde, while also reserving space for later weapon installation. Jing lowered her head in thought. Huan frowned. Can't you do it? Yu, standing beside her, looked at her daughter nervously. No, I took a look around this morning and I already have a preliminary renovation plan that should meet your goals. Jing looked directly into Huan's eyes, her phoenix eyes sparkling. Huan was secretly pleased, but said calmly, tell me about it. Jing cleared her throat. The main steel plate of the front section is between 15-25 mm thick, the front bumper is 20 to 25 mm, the sides are 15 to 20 mm, and the roof is about 15 mm. It seems thick, but this old-fashioned AA3 carbon steel is not very impact-resistant. Ordinary carbon-based creatures can't stop the train, but since it's the apocalypse, we have to consider the most extreme scenarios. Suppose an elephant appears on the tracks, the current locomotive will definitely be damaged if it hits it. If it hits the side steel plate, it might even tear it apart. This morning we welded 30 degrees angled steel plates, which can push aside track obstacles and low-level zombie hordes, but it's far from enough. I think the front of the train should have more ramming angles, so that it can violently smash through evolved beasts like bloodhounds. Yujing clenched her fist and gestured a rhyming motion. The bloodhounds this morning had left a deep impression on her. Then comes the reinforcement of the carriages. The old-style green carriages are actually only about 3 to 5 millimeters thick, including the side walls, mostly around 3 millimeters. The rest is the insulation and inner lining, which are the parts that need to be strengthened. I suggest using 1.2 centimeter steel plates for welding. Then, increase the thickness inside with a honeycomb buffer layer. Although it will take up a lot of space, the train's safety is definitely more important than its load-bearing capacity. There are a bit too many windows in the carriages. For storage carriages, I suggest sealing them directly with steel plates. For windows that need light, use explosion-proof mesh to create light-transmitting grills, but all windows should have an additional 10 mm steel plate inside to ensure that no light leaks out from inside the carriage. Su Huan imagined Yujing's plan in his mind, and many points coincided with his own. The phrase safety is more important than load-bearing capacity resonated with him deeply. That's a very good idea. Could you briefly explain your plans for the roof and the connecting bridge? Yujing took a sip of her cola and continued. My idea for the roof is to use a fence as defense. The train is already quite tall, even the regular carriages are 4.8 meters high due to the air conditioning, comparable to a small city wall. I plan to build a bridge on the second carriage, the second level of the sightseeing train, connecting it to the roof of the carriages behind, creating a combat platform. That's the general idea. Her words were concise and sharp. There was no shyness or hesitation, just like in an interview, showcasing her strengths and professionalism to the fullest. Most importantly, Yujing wasn't just talking, she also produced a sheet of paper filled with dense calculations. It listed the dimensions of the materials needed to arm all the carriages. 1.25 meters x 2.5 meters standard steel plates, a total of 3,000 pieces. Although it was just a rough estimate, it was still impressive. Su Huan looked at the confident Yujing, his eyes brightening, his appreciation undisguised. The overall design is acceptable. I have 2 points to make. First, besides the ramming corners, I'd like to add a weeding function. I don't know if you've noticed, but a kind of red mutated plant has already grown on the ground. I suspect this plant might become ubiquitous in the future. If it grows on the tracks, it will greatly slow down the train's speed. Second, the roof must be thickened. You've already seen the bloodhounds today. 4 or 5 meters in height is nothing to evolved beasts. The plan for the rooftop combat platform can be retained, but the roof of the carriages must be reinforced. That's the first phase of the armed train plan. Do you have anything to add? Su Huan asked. Yujing had said a lot in one breath, and now she seemed lost in thought, not answering. The boy hesitated for a moment, looked around, and seeing that no one was going to speak, he finally spoke. If it's to stop zombies, why not add some spikes or something similar to the sides of the train? Spirits are too small and easily break. They have a strong visual effect, but they're not practical against zombies, which don't feel pain. However, we could weld some steel bars to prevent climbing and also act as protective bars. Yujing, who seemed to be daydreaming, immediately gave professional feedback. Su Huan encouraged, Zioba's suggestion is excellent. By the way, I'm curious about the area of metal your ability can manipulate? Hearing this question, everyone looked at Key Zioba. A ladle on the wall, without any external force, floated into the air. My ability is called metal manipulation. I can influence all metals through the energy within my body, including levitation like this, and flight. Su Huan's lips curled into a smile. Indeed, a truly enviable talent. In his previous life, Su Huan guessed that Zioba's ability was metal manipulation, otherwise, it would be impossible to manipulate metal so skillfully. He had also seen other manipulators, but their core traits were only metal affinity and flame affinity. While a high-level ability like metal manipulation could be achieved later through gene-enhancing drugs, the probability was extremely low. The ladle smoothly circled the carriage once before returning to everyone's view. In this mode, the heavier the metal, the more energy it consumes. If you want to change, the metal spoon gradually thinned, and the wooden handle automatically detached, held in place by the metal sheet and placed on the table. The energy consumed is affected by the strength of the metal. The harder the metal, the more energy is required to change it. Similarly, complex operations also consume a lot of energy, but I haven't tried to push my abilities to their limits. Kizaioba gave a simple summary, giving everyone a clear impression of his abilities. Chapter 12. I hope you hurry. Su Huan calculated the workload of covering all 3,000 steel plates listed by Yu Jing. With 42 carriages and a locomotive, the amount of work would be enormous. However, the train had few other things to do but a lot of people. Kizaioba only needed to do simple cutting and welding, so the energy consumption wasn't high. Su Huan cracked his knuckles and looked at Wanzing. Your task tomorrow is to collect the polymorphic crystals from the zombies. Don't worry about the zombies, I'll handle that. Okay, Wanzing readily agreed. Well, Liang Quan, you have two tasks. One is to organize and summarize the collected supplies, and the other is to bring the zombie corpses here. You need to do this yourself, don't let the rest of the group get on the train. Understood. With the polymorphic crystals, the endurance problem was solved. The polymorphic crystals could be directly absorbed by evolved beings, the absorbed portion would disappear, while the remainder would remain in a stable crystal state. However, the duration was limited, only the collector could maintain the polymorphic crystal form for an extended period. Su Huan glanced at his watch, it was already 10 p.m. It has to be said, time without entertainment is truly precious. That's all for today, everyone can go and rest. You can choose any of the soft sleeper compartments in carriage number 4. Su Huan stood up first and walked towards carriage number 3. This entire carriage was reserved for himself. Standing in front of the door, Su Huan hesitated to go in. After a while, he turned around and looked at Yu Jing, who was standing calmly behind him, and asked suspiciously, "Why aren't you sleeping? What are you doing following me? You have a lot of tools in your room, I'd like to borrow them." Su Huan glanced at her sideways, thinking that she had finally figured things out and was offering herself up. Pushing open the door, the room was completely renovated. Various tools were placed against the wall on a makeshift shelf, and various loose pencils and steel rulers were neatly arranged in a row on the table. The carpet had been replaced, and the grease stains were gone. The bed was clean and tidy. My mom cleaned it. Yu Jing entered the room and picked out a few things very naturally. Just as she was about to leave, she saw Su Huan standing at the door with a strange expression, showing no intention of making way. Yu Jing raised her fair chin, her phoenix eyes searching. "Do you want to sleep with me?" The question came out of nowhere, and Su Huan hadn't expected her to be so direct. For a moment, he felt like he was 3 years after the apocalypse. Back then, girls were just as passionate and bold. But she was clearly different, there was no shyness or desire on her face, she simply asked the question. Su Huan naturally didn't want to be outdone, and the corners of his mouth turned up. "I want both." Yu Jing frowned, then relaxed. "I see. Physiologically, there's no problem. Ethically, it's the apocalypse, so there's nothing to worry about, but my mother might not be able to accept it." Su Huan felt like a pervert meeting a pervert. His lust had lost ground, but his fighting spirit had soared. "Me, a beast who's lived 4 years in the apocalypse, can I really be controlled by a virgin like you? So you can accept it?" Su Huan didn't back down but instead grabbed Yu Jing's slender waist with one hand. Very slender, and very elastic. The high-waisted jeans were form-fitting and tight, making her legs appear even longer and her waist and hips more shapely. Just like her self-introduction, she exuded a healthy vitality. Holding her close, a sense of control arose, along with a touch of prestige. Su Huan's high school grades weren't ideal, he barely made it into university. He harbored a subconscious desire for higher education, and Yu Jing's excellence undeniably fueled his desire. Yu Jing didn't react to Su Huan's actions, calmly glancing at her watch. "If you need me, could I take a shower first?" Su Huan narrowed his eyes, a hint of danger in them. "Are you in a hurry?" "Don't worry, I'm 22, never had a boyfriend, this is my first time, I'm healthy and have no diseases, I can completely satisfy your needs. However, I'd like to draw some sketches before bed, I hope you can hurry. I'm very slow at that kind of thing." Su Huan's fingertips slid down to the metal clasp on her waist, gently flicking it, a thrill of unlocking a gift filling his mind. Yu Jing's gaze was calm yet tinged with a hint of confusion. "After 10 minutes, your senses will become numb. If it continues, the pain will likely outweigh the pleasure." Seeing Yu Jing's earnest analysis, Su Huan chuckled in exasperation. He realized this woman wasn't feigning composure, She genuinely didn't care about anything happening between them. Su Huan tapped her flat stomach heavily with his fingertip. Wouldn't you care if it were someone else? Yu Jing looked up in surprise, her soft fingers quickly tracing Su Huan's chin. A smile appeared on her face, a fleeting beauty like an iceberg shattering and sliding into the sea. No way, you're still kind of handsome. With that, taking advantage of Su Huan's stunned moment, she ducked under his arm and slipped out. Walking out of the room, her brow relaxed, and her smile faded. She didn't dislike Su Huan, but that was all. This wasn't out of any emotion, but rather because she considered it the best solution at the moment. Men are simple creatures. When they can't have something, they're like cats, sniffing and nagging, making things unbearable. She might as well let him have his fill all at once, so his attention would return to her own abilities and value. But she didn't want to rely on her body to establish herself on the train. She liked the appreciation in Su Huan's eyes, but she didn't want it to be mixed with a man's appreciation for a woman. Besides, modifying the train to resist the zombie horde, she quite liked this crazy plan. In the dim light, the pencil drew straight lines on the white paper, but at the last moment, it suddenly slipped, and a slight discord appeared in the beautiful picture. Snap! Su Huan snapped the pencil. His irritated hands clenched, and a high temperature rose, burning the interior design drawings of the carriage he had just drawn. Damn it, I've been manipulated. Forget it, I'll go to sleep. When I have time, I'll make her pay sooner or later. Su Huan thought viciously. Tonight, the train conductor was too angry to ride in the log. Inside carriage number 24. In the pitch black, a rough voice cursed, I don't know what that Su guy is up to, putting all sorts of trash on board. That little brat dared to steal my stuff. I only broke one of his fingers, and that whole family of old hags still dares to mess with me. They're really asking for trouble. Calm down, brother dog, a young man with a thuggish look said, leaning back in his seat. He put one foot on the shoulder of the woman bustling below. Go, help brother dog calm down. The woman flinched and quickly turned around, slowly groping in the darkness. Before she could find anything, she was bumped from behind and stumbled. The young man, panting heavily, said, that Su guy's methods are too wicked. Let the group in carriage 7 try it first. The man called brother dog, annoyed by the groping below, slapped her. Useless. The woman groaned, but dared not make a sound. Dog brother sighed contentedly, they came looking for me again. I think the same as you, let them try. I'm not going to be the first to stick my neck out. By the way, send a few men and bring that old lady's daughter-in-law over. They started this fire, so they have to put it out themselves. A burst of lewd laughter immediately filled the surrounding area. Chapter 13 Storage Cart. Several wandering zombies suddenly turned their gaze to the dark tunnel, confirming that the noise was coming from there, and swarmed towards it. The next moment, a massive steel object roared out, crushing the zombies as if they were bugs. It didn't even slow down, the only difference being a few bloodstains on the shovel. The train gradually slowed down and stopped on the crisscrossing tracks outside the steel factory. Many other trains were also parked on both sides, with zombies in various uniforms wandering in the gaps. However, their overall numbers were not large. Most of the population was concentrated in the city. These factories were only for workers who couldn't go home due to the sudden outbreak of the apocalypse. December 18th, early winter, temperature 26 degrees Celsius. 7 days remained until the heat wave, and everything was going smoothly. As usual, Su Huan and Lion Quan went down to clear out a few zombies. Then they let the passengers out. Today's special tickets were steel plates. One ticket was enough to complete the objective. If they brought back more than one, they could get 3 free meals a day, hot-boxed lunches. After clearing the last passenger off the train, Su Huan convened a brief meeting in the dining cart to have breakfast. The breakfast consisted of mashed potatoes with butter, luncheon meat sandwiches, and canned peaches, all freshly made by Yu that morning. After finishing the last drop of juice from the canned peaches, Su Huan said, it'll be some time before they bring back the steel plates. We can't waste that time. Except for one Xing, whose task you're on, everyone else, come with me to organize the supplies in the train and build some shelves to categorize and store them. Let's remove all the partitions in the 6th carriage and turn it into a storage room. We'll put easily stored foods in there, and then build shelves in every carriage to store enough food for at least one person for 3 months. Let's get started. Liang Quan, go and turn on the air conditioning in carriage 6. From now on, this carriage will be kept at a constant 22 degrees Celsius, we don't need to turn it off. You, wash the dishes first, then go over there. The rest of you, follow me. Everyone quickly got to work according to Su Huan's orders. Although the team was small, everyone played their part, and most importantly, command was effortless, with no one outwardly complying but inwardly resisting. This was what Su Huan was most satisfied with. Leading Yu Jing and Qi Xiaoba to carriage number 6, Yu Jing's usually calm eyes lit up at the sight of the tools. Without Su Huan saying a word, she gathered her long hair into a bun and began rummaging through the various sleeper compartments. This air pump is great, good stuff. Finally, a power drill. A professional-grade lithium-ion drill with a torque ring. Qi Xiaoba, seeing Yu Jing like this for the first time, had a big look of confusion on her face. Why could one person's demeanor be so different? Su Huan smirked, ignore her, come and see if you can remove this annoying partition. Okay. Su Huan felt a faint energy fluctuation emanating from Qi Xiaoba. The screws on the partition vibrated. Soon, several semi-melted metal screws were pulled out and set aside. Su Huan raised an eyebrow and said, you can try directly tightening the screws, or use more subtle operations to reduce energy loss. Qi Xiaoba paused for a moment, then focused on a screw again and activated his ability. Soon, the screw was unscrewed. Is that so? It does save a lot of energy. Xiaoba gripped the armrest of the wheelchair. Yes, continue. Su Huan shrugged. Qi Xiaoba continued to dismantle the internal components of the carriage, while Su Huan dismantled the non-metallic plates. These lightweight materials could be used for internal partitions. After all, the external armor was already heavy, and lightweight materials could reduce the burden on the vehicle. This work would be time-consuming for others, but it was incredibly convenient for the two of them. Su Huan directly melted the integrated materials with high temperatures. In no time, the entire number 6 carriage was completely dismantled. Su, it's almost done, Qi Xiaoba called out. Yu Jing also came over with an electric drill, examining the new space. The shelving needs to be balanced to avoid damaging the frame. Su Huan straightened up, carrying a chair, and glanced at the open carriage. First, melt the existing metal materials into steel bars. If that's not enough, we'll dismantle some more from the back. Yu Jing, you arrange the placement. He paused, then suddenly added, remember to reserve space for water tanks and fuel tanks. Yu Jing raised her chin slightly, thoughtfully. How big should the water tanks be? Like the supplies, every carriage needs one. What's the maximum capacity? Yu Jing lowered her eyes and silently calculated. Theoretically, a carriage can hold tens of tons, but considering it won't affect operations, it'll only be around 10 tons. Any more would be too much of a burden. 10 tons. Su Huan pondered for a moment. No need for that many. Storage is the priority. Reserve space for 4 tons of water in each carriage. What about fuel tanks? Yu Jing asked meticulously. Every request this man made seemed to be a replication of some predetermined outcome. Just enough to support the flamethrower. Yu Jing said excitedly, revealing her pretty little tiger teeth. Fuel alone won't be enough, we need to add some more powerful fuel. Then Yu Jing began directing the two to start building the shelves. With Qi Xiaoba, the most troublesome thing, metal cutting and welding, was saved. Even scrap metal could be pinched and stretched into a beautiful metal strip by Xiaoba. Just as they finished, Huan and Yu, who had finished their work, also joined in. Move it a little to the side, yes, a little higher, so it's easier to reach things in the middle of the shelf. There will be more small items, so we can cut more compartments. Xiaoba, seal up that window at the back first. Is that not enough? There's a lot of metal in carriage number 5, take some more. The group was running around in circles under her command, while Su Huan was much more relaxed. Watching the storage carriage gradually take shape and all the windows sealed, his sense of security was gradually built up. Looking around, rows of metal shelves connected directly to the roof, standing firmly in place even when the vehicle shook. Bright lights replaced sunlight to illuminate the shelves. Several people tossed miscellaneous items out of the car, and Huan brought in boxes of easily preserved canned goods. Yu, with a pen and paper, took notes. The woman was very diligent. This was the new job Su Huan had given her, warehouse manager. Recording inventory and daily consumption of supplies. Su Huan walked up behind her, glanced at the bold handwriting in the notebook, and frowned slightly. How much? Yu was startled and quickly replied, the most abundant food items are various canned goods and fresh water, such as canned meats, fruits, and grains, over 3,000 cans in total. Chapter 14 Passengers must not be beaten without reason. Then there are various long shelf-life foods such as biscuits, ham, and instant noodles, each with. Let's just calculate how many days 6 people can eat. Huan said casually. Not counting canned food, rice, flour, and cooking oil, at 2 meals a day, it can last about 7 months. What about clean water reserves? 120 cases of bottled water, 24 bottles per case, 23 barrels of bottled water, and 842 bottles of various beverages. Yu explained in detail. Huan secretly calculated that these supplies alone would be enough for the 6-person team to live comfortably in the apocalypse. Not to mention, there was a large amount of non-staple food not included in the reserves, scattered in the first few carriages. But these supplies were only for temporary use. The apocalypse might last for many years, and relying solely on food reserves would inevitably lead to depletion. Resources would become increasingly difficult to find in the future, making the creation of a carriage farm imperative. At that time, the various carriages would be rationally allocated, allowing resources to circulate, and self-sufficiency through the armed train would be the key. Thump thump thump. A rhythmic knocking sound came from the carriage. Several people simultaneously turned their gazes to Huan. You guys tidy up here first. Remember to lock the door to carriage number 7. Let's just fuse it into one piece and open it when needed, Huan instructed, then walked towards carriage number 5. He saw several passengers standing outside the window, sweating profusely and looking around warily. Huan activated his all-encompassing senses, and only opened the window after confirming there was nothing above or below him. A blast of hot air hit him. He calmly asked, "What is it?" A man said, "We found the steel plates, but there are a lot of them. There are zombies around, and we can't get them back without a vehicle." Huan frowned. He definitely needed to prepare some tools. This time it was steel plates, next time it might be small water purifiers. Relying on people to carry them was unreliable. He'd have to think of a solution later. But right now, Huan coldly said, "Finding a vehicle is your business. I don't care what methods you use. I only want the steel plates. If you don't bring back the steel plates, no one is getting on the train." He slammed the window shut. Left with no other option, the group had to turn back to find a way to transport the steel plates. When they turned around, the storage room had been almost completely tidied up. Various metal cans were neatly arranged on black iron shelves, like rows of city walls, exuding a heavy sense of satisfaction. Several people looked at him. What happened? Huan rubbed his chin. Maybe we should get a crane. Yu agreed. We can install it on the carriage to lift the steel plates. Otherwise, it's difficult to lift the steel plates to the roof by manpower. Huan asked, "Shall we set off to search now?" Huan was taken aback. Set off? What do you mean, set off? Huan sighed. Wasn't the lesson from that bloodhound yesterday enough? It's already this dangerous on the train, anything can happen outside. Think before you make decisions. This is the apocalypse. Yujing, go to my room and get a piece of paper. Write down that whoever gets the crane will receive 3 months of free train tickets. Okay, before they come back, let's quickly build the frames for the other carriages. Huan ignored them and continued working on carriage number 5. The apocalypse was becoming increasingly dangerous. Based on his survival experience from his previous life, the best way to live was to survive. No matter how fast humans evolve, can they outrun animals? Anyway, he was determined not to leave the train until he evolved to the point where he could roam freely in the apocalypse. Even if all the passengers behind him died, he didn't want to risk his life for such a trivial matter as searching for supplies. The group continued working, and with the experience from carriage 6, they moved much faster later on. Moreover, the other carriages didn't need to be completely demolished, only parts needed to be modified. Although Huan occupied an entire carriage, carriage 4 had a total of 8 soft sleeper berths, and Yujing and her daughter were using one of them, leaving plenty of room for the others. Carriage 5 had previously been used for storing miscellaneous items, but now that it had been cleared, it could be converted into a medical carriage. Before they finished, it was already afternoon, and passengers had begun to return. Huan resumed his cheerful ticket collection time. Ticket exchange. A steel plate was pushed forward. Su Huan looked up and saw a man in front of him whose appearance was as rough as his voice. Beside him stood a young man with a large area of tattoos on his face, his eyes frivolous, always trying to peek into the carriages behind him. He remembered this group of people very well, the family that stole his supplies had left with them this morning. Now it seemed. Su Huan glanced around, a smile involuntarily creeping onto his lips. The once bustling family was now reduced to just the old lady's youngest son, who stood timidly at the back, hands no longer in his pockets, surrounded by several older passengers. After watching the spectacle, his gaze returned to the steel plates. 8 steel plates, 8 people, that's right, but to our newbies. Newbies get 2 plates, Su Huan said calmly, pointing to the people behind him. The tattooed youth scoffed, that's right, 7 people. That one doesn't count. The extra plate is for his wife. Upon hearing this, the boy behind him immediately cried out pitifully, Brother Dog, you said you'd give me a spot if my dad went to distract the zombies, what are you now? Bang! The passenger next to him slapped him hard. The muffled thuds of punches landing made Su Huan's ears burn. He said sternly, no hitting passengers without reason. The tattooed youth turned around, grinning, didn't you give this spot to your wife? You're a grown man, why are you fighting with her? Just find a couple more steel plates, there are plenty at the steel mill. The beaten-up boy was sandwiched between several men, his mouth covered, his eyes red with anger. The burly man frowned and scolded, Kid, I'm talking to you. The tattooed youth quickly turned around, pretending to slap himself, pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, and offered it to Su Huan. Brother Su, we're uneducated, we don't know any better, please don't hold it against me. Su Huan looked at the 2 cigarettes in his hand with amusement, then extended 2 fingers, directly gripping the boy's wrist, converting his energy into an electric current. In an instant, the youth called Kid paled, his muscles stiffened, and his clothes crackled. Dog Brother and his gang's expressions changed drastically. But they dared not step forward. Su Huan simply took the entire pack of cigarettes from the other man's hand before letting go, casually saying, it's nothing. The little devil fell to the ground with a thud, looking at Su Huan as if he'd seen a ghost, his eyebrows smudged, his tongue tied, unable to utter a word for a long time. Su Huan casually put the cigarettes back into the pack, ticked the names on the roster, and said, although I don't smoke, I like collecting them. Remember to bring me a whole carton next time. Okay, those who have paid their tickets can board now. Dog Brother and his gang didn't dare say anything, quickly lifted the little devil, and slunk onto the bus. The woman glanced at her fallen husband, gritted her teeth, and followed him onto the bus. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Construction Team. The abandoned man tried to climb onto the carriage, but Su Huan stopped him. Where's your ticket? The man, like a mad dog, pointed at Su Huan and cursed, you're in cahoots with him, you tricked us onto the train, I'll fuck you. Thump. The corpse fell to the ground. Energy compression was a bit difficult to use against evolved beasts, but killing ordinary people who hadn't evolved was a breeze. Su Huan picked at his ear, wait, just get to the point, next. December 18th, early winter, 26 degrees Celsius, 29 degrees Celsius. It seems the people have elected a new leader. Train conductor's log. Su Huan noted the temperature at the hottest time in the log. Of the 1,201 regular passengers, only 624 had returned, the rest either died outside or ran away, which was normal. Su Huan was never afraid of them running away. The train is like an ironclad train with ever-changing passengers. Old passengers leave, and new ones arrive, just like that family from yesterday. Including the new group of workers, there were a total of 744 people. A wave might come back tonight, but the number won't exceed 1,000 today. The crane job was taken by a young man named Gao Ziechi, who wouldn't be back until evening, but Su Huan wasn't going to waste time waiting. He looked at the new names on the roster, then looked up at the group of workers with fear on their faces. There's a job, want it? The workers looked at the corpses lying on the ground and didn't dare to approach. They stood there whispering among themselves. Maybe we should leave? Where to? There's no food left in the factory, I'm so hungry I want to eat someone. This is the only truck that's coming all these days. We can't get out anywhere else. There are man-eating monsters everywhere. Aren't there fewer zombies to the north? Let's go out that way. There are fewer zombies there, but there are giant cocoons everywhere. They look sinister. You can leave. I'm not leaving. Su Huan had been listening calmly, but when he heard a certain word, his eyes suddenly sharpened. He pointed at a thin man in the crowd. What did you just say? Giant cocoons? The man was startled and took a step back. He breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that he hadn't collapsed like the other man, and shouted from a distance, "It's a giant pupa, taller than a person, shaped like a silkworm cocoon. How many are there?" Seeing that Su Huan was only asking, the worker grew bolder and stepped forward, replying, "There are tons. They're everywhere, on the road, in houses." Su Huan's expression was uncertain. The giant pupa the worker mentioned was a necessary step in the second stage of zombie evolution. Zombies that had accumulated enough general energy would form a special corpse pupa under high temperatures. When it emerged, it was the second stage, also known as a first-tier zombie. Their strength was vastly different from ordinary zombies, and some with special abilities could even hunt professional evolved beings. In his previous life, he had been too busy running around to pay attention to the evolutionary milestones of zombies, and he hadn't expected that zombies would begin evolving so quickly. Only 9 days had passed. When these corpse pupae hatched, the people who had lost their heavy firepower would face true doom. This information is valuable. Here, take this. Su Huan took a deep breath and tossed over the half-pack of cigarettes he had just snatched. The worker was overjoyed and, not caring that Su Huan had thrown it on the ground, picked it up and started sharing it with his co-workers. Hearing this news, Su Huan had no time for gentle persuasion and said directly, "Who's the leader? Come out and speak." The workers looked around, and finally, a man about 1.8 meters tall stepped forward. Although not tall, he was incredibly broad-shouldered, comparable to Lion Quan, and his voice was deep and resonant. "Yes, it's me. You said you had some work for us, but given the current situation, we don't want money. I'll provide you with 3 days' worth of meals." As he spoke, Su Huan suddenly had a new idea and changed his tune. "If you work for a day, I'll provide 2 meals. If you don't work, I'll provide 1. As long as you're on the train for a day, this promise will be valid, but it only applies to the group of you currently on board." The man, though honest-looking, was also quick-witted and asked, "I saw you collecting their tickets earlier, so you mean you need tickets to stay on the train?" Of course, there's no reason to get on the train without buying a ticket. This time, Su Huan didn't beat around the bush but spoke directly. Speaking to people in a certain way isn't entirely negative, it involves a lot of skill. Being straightforward with honest people is often easier than playing mind games. We want free tickets. Free tickets are impossible. You can get free tickets when you have work, but you still have to earn money for tickets when you don't. Su Huan decisively refused. There were 120 workers in total. If they all got free tickets, what would he eat? Providing meals was already the biggest concession. The tickets were his power to control everyone, even if it was just nominal. He couldn't just create a bunch of people with exemptions. The man hesitated for a moment, looked at his co-workers, and gritted his teeth. "Fine, what kind of work? We're all from the steel mill, we can't do anything that requires brains." Su Huan's expression softened slightly. "We'll be working with steel plates. Your name is Wang He, right? From now on, you'll be the leader of these 120 people. I'll only come to you if there's anything, understand?" Wang He agreed. "When do we start working?" Su Huan glanced at the sky. The sun was already setting, and there were still more than 3 hours until dark. Nobody knew whether the batch of corpse pupae would hatch tomorrow or tonight. Time was running out. He didn't dare to gamble. Looking directly at Wang He, Su Huan said in a solemn voice, "Now." The dark red front of the train gleamed coldly in the setting sun. The 25mm shovel-shaped armor and the newly added 1.2cm steel plates formed a menacing ram, like an enraged steel rhinoceros. On the crisscrossing tracks, a group of men in overalls carried 1.2cm steel plates closer to the train, their blue clothes soaked with sweat. Fortunately, they didn't need to weld them. After holding them up for a while, a boy in a wheelchair inside would attach the steel plates to them. Someone tried pulling on them and felt they were even more secure than welded ones. As a result, the workers had even greater respect for Su Huan, who was in charge of the train, and worked even harder. Su Huan tapped the outer wall of the carriage with his finger. The metallic vibrations mixed with a heat wave spread through the air, and the heavy steel gave him an extremely solid sense of security. He squinted at the window. The cutting lines drawn by Yu Jing with chalk were as smooth as if they had been polished. The opening in the steel plate was slightly smaller than the window, perfectly covering the explosion-proof mesh and tempered glass inside, but it didn't affect opening and closing the window. Su Huan was very satisfied with this. Beads of sweat rolled down his Adam's apple and into his collar, gradually turning into salt stains at the 29 degrees Celsius temperature. Even a slight lick of his lips tasted salty. Have your mom make the workers' boxed lunches first, with plenty of oil and salt. It's already being made. Yu Jing leaned out from the roof of the car, her jeans stained with dirt. Catch me. Chapter 16 Crane. After saying that, she jumped down from the edge of the roof. Thump. Su Huan caught her feet, supporting her calves, and pulled her into his arms. Shaking his sore wrists, Su Huan asked, "How is the penetration test?" "No problem, even more perfect than the welding." Yu Jing unscrewed the dye-penetrant canister, and the purplish-red liquid flowed along the weld seams on the side of the carriage. 10 minutes later, the developer was sprayed on, and there were no cracks or stains. Su Huan nodded. After all, he was a metal worker, and his skills were impeccable. It was nearing dusk, and the sun was about to set. The most complex part, the front ram, was complete. The first 5 carriages, including the 1.2 cm armor plating on the front, had been welded, and machine gun positions were reserved on the roof. The steel plates on both sides of carriages 6 to 9 were welded, and most of the windows were sealed off, leaving only 2 on each side to ensure basic lighting. This way, Xiaoba didn't need to expend special effort cutting them. The whole steel plate could be directly pieced together. Heavy footsteps echoed from the carriage. Liang Quan emerged, carrying a corpse wrapped in a plastic bag. His light gray short-sleeved shirt was soaked with sweat on his chest. He jumped off the carriage and tossed it aside a short distance from the front. A dozen or so black bags had already piled up there. "How many are there now?" Su Huan asked when he returned. Liang Quan scratched his head. "There should be 12. Su Huan nodded. "Let's get on the train." The 3 boarded the carriage from the sightseeing bus section. Although the air conditioning was on full blast, a strong, pungent stench filled the air as soon as they entered. Mixed with the cool air conditioning, they felt like they were in a morgue. Su Huan, however, took a deep breath. A familiar smell. The carpet on the carriage floor had been removed and replaced with a large plastic sheet, most of which was empty, still bearing traces of flesh and blood. Only the central sheet held the zombie. Several black iron racks around the area were filled with various tools, nail guns, electric drills, electric picks, chainsaws. It looked like a dismemberment room for a serial killer. Huan Xing sat on a small chair next to the zombie, closing her eyes and concentrating on collecting the polymorphic crystals. After a long while, Huan Xing slowly opened her eyes and saw Su Huan enter. She placed 11 energy crystals, each about the size of a little fingernail, on the table, her voice slightly hoarse. "I collected a total of 12 energy crystals, but I ran out of energy, so I used 1. But after 10, no matter how much energy I had, the collection speed slowed down, and I always felt a persistent fatigue." Su Huan took a few energy crystals and instructed her, "That means your mental energy has reached its limit. Don't force it, a good night's sleep will restore it. You can rest for a while before continuing, but be careful not to overexert yourself. Stop when you feel you've had enough." Huan Xing nodded and added, "I've noticed a pattern. The longer a zombie has been dead, the more energy it loses, and the smaller the crystals become. However, the ones in your hand are a bit more uniform." Su Huan played with the transparent crystals in his hand, examining them closely, but couldn't find any difference. He hadn't noticed this in his previous life. It must be that the collectors have a special way of measuring energy. "By the way, the zombies are gone," Liang Quan suddenly said from the side. "How, there's a bunch in the back carriage." Su Huan smirked. The reason these zombies weren't cleared out was to be used as evolution materials. Otherwise, they'd have to be sent to capture them when needed, adding unnecessary complications. Leaving Yu Jing to help you cook, Su Huan and Liang Quan got off the train, while Xiaoba was still outside helping the workers weld steel plates. Just as they got off, they saw Wang He approaching. Su Huan raised an eyebrow and asked, "What's wrong?" Wang He looked troubled. "Why are there so many zombies in carriage number 10? The brothers are too scared to touch them. By this time, the sun had completely sunk below the horizon, and although there was still light, it was already fading into darkness. Su Huan pondered for a moment and said, "That's all for today. You'll go into carriage number 7 later. I'll have someone bring food over later. Before you get on the train, pack everything up, and carry all the steel plates up, leave nothing behind." Hearing his boss speak, Wang He breathed a sigh of relief. Thinking that he would soon be able to eat, he couldn't help but swallow, a hint of joy appearing on his face after enduring hunger for several days. He quickly went to call the workers to get on the vehicle. Su Huan followed. Qiziaoba sat in an electric wheelchair, the faint night light concealing the slight fatigue on the boy's face. Su Huan handed him a universal energy crystal. "Is your energy consumption too high?" Qiziaoba smiled, took the universal energy crystal, and held it in his hand. "It's alright, just a bit sunny." Su Huan chuckled, "My oversight, I'll get you a parasol tomorrow." Liang Quan silently watched the two chatting and laughing. Even a fool could see that Su Huan's attitude towards Qiziaoba was unusual. It wasn't just about valuing him. It was more like a feeling of friendship. Liang Quan was puzzled as to why he had this thought. Could someone as cold and inhuman as Su Huan really have friendship? Shaking his head, Liang Quan shook off these chaotic thoughts and helped lift Qiziaoba onto the vehicle. The construction team also got on the vehicle behind, along with some passengers returning one after another. Although moving steel plates amidst hordes of zombies was difficult, under Su Huan's tutelage, they had developed a death-defying resolve to complete their mission. Su Huan stood at the window, watching. As night fell, he finally saw a dark shadow approaching the train, with a pillar in front of the engine, like a steel tentacle protruding from an armored sea monster. As it drew closer, the shadow revealed itself to be a red forklift. In front of the forklift was a hexagonal, multi-section telescopic boom. When the train reached them, a young man in a vest jumped from the driver's cab. His left leg was slightly bent, his weight shifted to his right foot. This strange landing could only mean two things: either he was relaxed, or his left leg was injured and unable to bear weight. "I brought back the boom. Does that mean the 3-month free train pass still applies?" the young man asked in a deep voice. Su Huan looked at him meaningfully, a smile playing on his lips. "Of course, this train is happy to serve you in the days to come, Mr. Gao Zhe." Gao Zhe ignored Su Huan and boarded the train on his own. Su Huan's gaze remained fixed on him until he disappeared into the carriage. Only then did he turn back and call out, "Liang Quan, throw down 2 steel plates, drive the forklift up, and ask Xiaoba to help tow it. This is a big machine." From the room behind him, Liang Quan responded and strode out. A creaking sound came from behind. Su Huan glanced over instinctively and saw Yu pushing a dining cart from the train towards carriage number 7. It was piled high with freshly prepared boxed meals. Chapter 17 Midnight Zombie Horde. Su Huan called out to Yu, casually picking up a boxed lunch and opening it. Potatoes were cut into chunks, stewed with a small amount of diced radish and minced beef until soft and mushy, then placed on top of the rice, emitting a fragrant aroma. There were also some pickled radish vegetables nearby. "Is it all potato and beef stew?" Su Huan asked. "We didn't have many vegetables left, and the portion was large, so I made something simpler," Yu said nervously, pausing before adding, "I didn't put in too much beef, just chopped it up, so it looks like a lot." Su Huan, of course, wasn't petty, saying calmly, "It's alright. Those doing manual labor need to eat well to work hard. I'll go with you." Passing storage car number 6, Su Huan lifted 5 cases of bottled water and followed her to the back. Although the consumption was high, it was only temporary. As long as they weren't working, these workers would still need to find supplies. Drinking 1 bottle of water meant giving them 3 in return, a surefire way to make money. The car was dimly lit, with only the sound of the dining car wheels audible. "By the way, is the door locked from the inside or has it melted?" Su Huan asked casually. Yu said weakly, "I made a slight modification. As long as we don't open the door on this side, the other side can't open it." Su Huan looked up and his eyelids twitched. These guys really had some ideas. The original simple door lock had been modified to an external one, with 3 horizontal metal bolts, making it look like the door of some vault. In addition to the locking mechanism, the door's strength had also been greatly improved, at least it wouldn't be smashed by a bloodhound. Yu opened the 3 visible locks and 1 hidden lock in turn before entering the central passageway. Seeing Su Huan and Wang He, the workers on the other side quickly opened the door. A stuffy, foul stench hit them. Su Huan's expression was normal, and Wang He was still dressed the same, but he looked like he had been pulled out of the water. His hair was wet, and beads of sweat rolled down his face from time to time. He smiled wryly. "It's so hot on the back carriages, could you turn on the air conditioning?" "Air conditioning is a resource too. We need extra supplies to turn it on. The outside temperature is already 28 or 29 degrees Celsius. So many people are crammed into the back carriages, and we can't even open the windows. It'll kill us." "Don't worry, the temperature will be lower at night, at most 26 degrees Celsius. No one will die," Su Huan said calmly. Wang He hesitated, then sighed and went to get his food. Seeing the fragrant potato and beef rice bowl, his mood improved considerably. He called out to the people in the back, and they all came to get their food. Only after the water and food were distributed did Su Huan and Wang He leave. Deep inside carriage number 9, Gao Zhe stared intently at the throng of heads in front of him. A moment later, a scarred man approached, surprised and suspicious. "So, the guy surnamed Su is here to distribute food to those workers? Potato and beef rice bowls. Damn. Hot food, haven't had it in ages. I almost wanted to grab some." Gao Zhe ate his compressed biscuits in small bites, his tone calm. "It's just a tactic to divide us. They have 120 people. What are you going to use to steal from them?" The scarred man cursed under his breath. "Damn it, these workers have pushed a lot of our people to the back." Gao Zhe remained unmoved. "How are you today?" A deep, gentle voice sounded from across from Gao Zhe. Gao Zhe looked up at the man opposite him. His eyebrows were slightly gray, but his eyes were frighteningly dark. "Bad luck. I ended up in a zombie horde and only escaped with some injuries." "Were you discovered?" Gao Zhe hesitated for a moment. "I'm not sure, but he definitely remembers me." "That means he discovered you." The old man tapped his 2 index fingers heavily on the small table, making a dull thud. "Always prepare for the worst. Just prepare as if he discovered you. His abilities are too strange. Using his index fingers is just an illusion. Any part of his body can emit high-temperature energy blasts. Are you scared? I just need a trigger. A trigger is never something you wait for. Don't rush me. I will act naturally." Gao Zhe finished the last bite of his biscuit, grabbed a hoodie, put it behind his head, and closed his eyes to rest. Su Huan didn't go to rest. He had a feeling of unease. Perhaps it was because of the news about the zombie pupa today. Normally, he would have run away long ago. But completing a quarter of the armored steel plates today gave him a lot of confidence, and he planned to stay here and get another batch of steel plates tomorrow. He only got a little over 700 plates today, still short by more than 2,000. Finding so many standard steel plates elsewhere would be a real hassle. Suddenly, a sense of unease rose within him. Su Huan subconsciously glanced at the 7th carriage. He tiptoed to the door, lifted the curtain, and saw a group of people slumped together on chairs and the floor, fast asleep, seemingly unaffected. Perhaps every carriage should have an iron gate, Su Huan thought silently. But the alarm bells in his heart didn't subside. Instead, they grew stronger. He quickly pinpointed the cause: his own skill, universal energy perception. The reason he had inexplicably seen the bloodhounds last time was because he sensed universal energy, and his body had instinctively sent out warning signals. Su Huan's heart sank. He walked to the window, lifted a corner of the curtain, and looked outside. His black pupils contracted sharply. A horde of zombies. A massive horde of zombies. Countless zombies densely surrounded the railing outside the railway, one on top of another, forming a second barrier. Every now and then, a zombie would fall from the top. They staggered towards the train. Su Huan lowered the curtain and ran quickly to the engine, shouting, "Turn off all the lights. Liang Quan, go start the engine." Without waiting for his reminder, everyone noticed the scene and became extremely alert. Liang Quan, who was busy at work, didn't hesitate for a moment, dropping what he was doing and rushing over. As the lights went out, the entire train was plunged into darkness. Everyone reached the engine and watched Liang Quan complete the starting procedures, feeling the heavy roar of the train engine. They finally felt a little relieved. Su Huan stood by the window, looking down at the surging zombies, his face grim. Boom! The train slowly began to move, but it seemed to encounter immense resistance, with various thrashing, scratching, and crackling sounds of bubble wrap being crushed. Too many zombies at the front, we can't pick up speed, Liang Quan said in a deep voice. A cold glint flashed in Su Huan's eyes. Zioba, go seal door number 7. Everyone else stay at the front. Zioba's gaze was firm. Okay, no one can get through in the chaos. Okay. Su Huan sat directly in the passenger seat, his hands on the control panel. He took a deep breath. The surging psychic energy was continuously converted into electrical energy and forcefully poured into the train engine. The previously muffled engine seemed to take a deep breath. A powerful roar caused the entire front of the train to tremble slightly, hissing forward. Under the night sky, a long steel dragon struggled forward with all its might. Trying to break free from the horde of zombies that was like a quagmire. For questions about temperature, please refer to the works related information. Chapter 18 First Tire Zombie. Keep accelerating. Su Huan's voice, carrying the effects of a tranquilizer, pierced the darkness. Liang Quan's hands, gripping the control lever, bulged with veins, the instrument panel's fluorescent light casting flickering shadows on his sweat-covered nose. The train began its frenzied rampage through the horde of zombies. The train wheels creaked and groaned, mingling with the boiling roars of the zombies that filled the driver's cab, gnawing at everyone's nerves. The zombies blocking the front of the train were like clay, scooped up by the shovels, shoveled against the ram, and finally scattered to the sides, blood splattering like a torrential downpour onto the tempered glass. The horde of zombies piled up on both sides of the windows, their hideous and terrifying faces pressed greedily against the glass, staring intently at the people inside. Yu trembled, clutching her daughter's arm, not daring to lift her head. Wanzing also bit her lower lip, staring at the train ahead. Su Huan remained unresponsive to all the changes around him, focusing on one thing, converting the omnipotent energy within his body into high-voltage electricity to provide new power to the train. Bang! The train shuddered violently, finally picking up speed. The piles of zombies on both sides collapsed abruptly, left behind. A collective gasp filled the carriage. But Su Huan's expression remained unchanged, his eyes fixed on the railway tracks ahead. A large, fleshy foot landed on the rails, the excess flesh cascading down to the sleepers. The figure slowly turned, revealing two massive pectoral muscles like stacked granite, beneath which lay a huge belly that almost reached his thighs. At 2.6 meters tall, he appeared only slightly shorter than the locomotive. A metal component, salvaged from engineering equipment, jingled as it dragged behind him. It stood there like a small mountain, its black and red eyes observing the rapidly approaching locomotive with interest. It made no attempt to dodge, its mouth twisting into a terrifying grin that silenced the driver's cab once more. What is that? Wanzing asked in a trembling voice. Tier 1 zombie, butcher. Su Huan's voice was devoid of emotion, as cold and hard as a stone. Liang Quan, ram him. Understood. Liang Quan gritted his teeth and pushed the speed to the maximum. Su Huan pulled out 10 universal energy crystals from his pocket, clenched his fists, and a glint of madness flashed in his eyes. If he remembered correctly, it took exactly 10 zombie embryo-level universal energy crystals to upgrade from LV1 to LV2. The LV2 universal energy conversion efficiency reached 20%, which was equivalent to the energy output doubling instantly. No matter how powerful Butcher was, he was just flesh and blood generated by universal energy. He refused to believe it today. A train approaching 100 kilometers per hour, plus the more than 30 millimeters thick armor on the front and the ram, couldn't kill this bastard. The universal energy crystals in his palm were melting at a visible speed. He could clearly feel those cold energy streams climbing up his spine, exploding into billions of even smaller energy factors at the medulla oblongata. The originally dormant genes began to unwind and recombine, forming an evolutionary blueprint unique to energy suppliers LV1 universal energy conversion, LV2 universal energy conversion. In an instant, Su Huan felt something restricting him shatter, and the familiar sense of freedom returned somewhat. His chilling gaze pierced through the blood-stained glass, colliding with the crimson in the giant zombie's eye sockets. Neither gave way. The accelerating train shuddered again, its speed skyrocketing, crushing the zombie horde as it roared towards the butcher. The butcher roared, raising his arm and swinging the metal component he was dragging, slamming it down on the front of the train. Boom! From above, at the moment the little giant collided with a steel dragon, its iron-gray skin, wrapped in muscle and fat, was squeezed like a ball by the front of the train, reaching its limit in an instant, shattering with a crash, scattering bone fragments across the front of the train. The violent metallic clang made Su Huan slightly dazed, and he only realized after a moment that he was still on the train. The train beneath their feet continued its hum forward, the clanging sound like the triumphant drums of war. Light and exhilarating. Su Huan couldn't help but grin as wide as possible. No carbon-based life form could withstand the impact of tens of thousands of tons of steel. Any zombie that stood in his way would be crushed by the steel dragon beneath his feet. The passengers in the rear carriages were the first to be awakened. Because the steel plates only reached the 10th carriage, they enjoyed the zombie horde's window-to-window wake-up service. The green carriages were even more noisy, banging and clanging from the zombies' blows. Only when the train accelerated, shaking off these ordinary zombies, did the passengers in the rear recover from their despair, kneeling on the ground praising God, praising all the gods and Buddhas, and hurling the most vicious curses at the train conductor. As for the train's encounter with a butcher, to these passengers it was nothing more than a negligible jolt. The shockwaves transmitted to the rear carriages were less effective than the initial roar of 10,000 zombies. The carriage was pitch black, filled with a cacophony of clanging objects. The tattooed young man, perched on a chair, was spewing a torrent of abuse. That son of a bitch surnamed Su, he only welded the steel plates up to the 10th carriage, then ignored the rest. He only cares about himself, doesn't care about our lives at all. We risked so much every day to collect supplies for him, while he sat in the air-conditioned carriage eating delicious food and playing with girls, treating us like dogs. A sharp screech was drowned out by a jolt. A sharp claw silently pierced through his side, through his ribs, and straight into his heart. The young man's eyes widened, his mouth opened, and blood gushed uncontrollably. The man opposite him, Doug brother, had a grim expression, unaware that the young man sitting opposite him was dead. He thought the other man had just finished cursing and was catching his breath. The train sped quietly through the night at 70 kilometers per hour. Large patches of crimson blood stained the black steel plates, with limbs carelessly left behind by zombies now wedged in the gaps of the blast-proof netting or on the steel crash bars. But this only added to the armored train's steely aura, like a battle-hardened warrior. Inside the carriage, Su Huan's calm voice rang out. Liang Quan, check all the train's functions. Yu, check the details of the front of the train, whether the blast-proof netting is damaged, whether the tempered glass is broken. Yu Jing, check the dining car. Wanxing, check the sightseeing carriage, and also check the second floor, see if anything is lying on the roof. The person had said there was a bunch of zombie cocoons, but just now there was only a butcher blocking the way. Perhaps there were other Tier 1 zombies following behind. Besides the butcher, which is a strength-based type, zombies have many other ways of evolving, and some are even capable of keeping up with a train. Su Huan casually picked up a mobile phone from the shelf in the dining car. He turned it on with a little power input and, using the dim light of the lock screen, carefully inspected every corner of the train. Although he didn't recall any zombies capable of penetrating 12mm steel plates, caution had become a habit. Chapter 19 Roar, unable to break defense. When Su Huan reached carriage number 5, he suddenly stopped and abruptly looked up at the roof. He continued forward, and from the dimly lit storage carriage came the sound of motors running. Kizil Obis' figure emerged from the darkness. Seeing Su Huan, he gently shook his head, indicating there was no danger. Suddenly, a series of hurried footsteps sounded behind him. Su Huan turned around and saw Wanxing, her face filled with anxiety. There's a zombie on the roof. Both Su Huan and Wanxing looked up simultaneously. There were two sounds, Wanxing's footsteps running inside the carriage, and the sound of something scraping against the roof. The thing had heard the noise and followed. But it didn't move for a while. Su Huan stood by the window and abruptly pulled back the curtains. Clang. A long, narrow claw suddenly stabbed at the window, leaving a clear hole in the tempered glass. Centered on the hole, the entire pane of glass shattered instantly into a white mess, barely maintaining its basic shape. The claw's tip was extremely thick and was caught in the blast-proof mesh. Su Huan cursed inwardly. Another piece of his glass had shattered. This thing was harder to repair than a broken steel plate. However, judging from the claws, Su Huan figured out what it was and, knowing what it was, darted to the front. A deformed humanoid zombie was clinging to the window, its hands transformed into 3 sharp claws, almost half its body length. Its body was as thin as a stick, but its ribs were extremely prominent, bulging under its armpits like wings. Between each rib was a row of eyes, densely packed, 9 on each side, 18 in total. They were all staring greedily at Su Huan. Su Huan reached out and touched the metal edge of the window frame, sneering, trying to get on without a ticket. Crackling arcs of electricity instantly flashed across the zombie's body. The zombie let out a painful growl. Without Su Huan's prompting, countless steel spikes instantly extended from the outer steel plate of the train, piercing it mercilessly. A Tier 1 night demon zombie, high attack, low defense. Lock him in the carriage, we'll deal with him tomorrow, Su Huan said coldly. Kizaoba's eyes seemed to turn into steel balls, coldly staring at the zombie outside the window. Steel wires were stretched from the train, tightly binding the night demon, who was trying to pull his body out of the spikes, to the train body. Only then did Su Huan stop the high-voltage electricity input. Without the control to freeze, the night demon could only howl louder, having no room to struggle. No matter how he swung his claws, it only produced bursts of sparks on the steel plates of the train. 12mm plus 3mm steel plates, let alone him. Even a Tier 2 night demon couldn't bite through such a tough nut. As his life force drained, the night demon gradually lost the ability to struggle, the crimson in his eyes fading, turning into deathly black. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Wan Xing stood frozen in place, and only came over after realizing that things had calmed down. I just wanted to remind you. It's nothing. Su Huan shook his head. If they couldn't ambush it, they could just launch a full-scale assault. As long as the night demon didn't break through the armored compartment, it would be killed by the two of them sooner or later. Anything happening behind? Su Huan turned to look at Kizaoba. There was a brief commotion at the beginning. Then it was quiet, Kizaoba said. As he spoke, Yu Jing and her daughter also came over. Liang Quan said one of the headlights was broken, but everything else was fine. The windows weren't damaged, but your number 3 car's window had signs of damage, like something was trying to get in but was stuck by the blast netting, Yu Jing reported. Su Huan nodded, feeling slightly relieved. It seemed that the past few days hadn't been a complete waste. However, with the steel plates and blast netting protecting the front compartments, then everyone thought of this problem and unanimously turned their gaze to number 7 compartment. Kizaoba reached out and unlocked several doors one by one. The group entered the bridge, which was very quiet inside, with only the clattering of the wheels. Through the glass, they could hear some commotion in the opposite compartment. There's a monster. Everyone in the back must be dead. Shut up, be quiet, I'm going to find Boss Su. What's the use of finding Boss Su? Keep your voices down, don't let the monster in. Su Huan gently placed his hand on Kizaoba's shoulder, and the latter immediately opened the locked door of carriage number 7. Several workers looked over at the sound and screamed several times in fright. The door is open. What are you yelling about? Go find Gao Zhe for me. Su Huan picked his ear and said. Hearing this voice, several workers nearby reacted. Boss Su, it's Boss Su. Boss Su, there's a monster in the back. Shut up, all of you. A deep, angry voice rang out, and Wang He squeezed out from the crowd. Su Huan waved his hand to interrupt him and asked directly, what's going on in the back, all that wailing and howling? A monster got into carriage number 10 and killed several zombies. I'm afraid everyone in the back has been killed. Wang He's voice trembled slightly as he tried to remain calm. Su Huan frowned, his feet remaining motionless. Call Gao Zhe over. I'm here. What do you want? A clear voice rang out from the crowd. The surrounding workers glanced around and made way for a narrow passage. The carriage was too dark, even with Su Huan's excellent eyesight, he could only barely make out a shadowy figure. But he didn't need to see clearly. He said calmly, go kill that night demon. Bring the body over, and I'll give you a permanent ticket. Gao Zhe's eyes flashed, he indeed knew quite a bit. This is your train. Why don't you go? I have a 3-month ticket, that's enough. Su Huan sneered inwardly. Waiting for me to get there before stabbing me in the back? You think I don't know that trick? Only an idiot would go and be attacked from both sides. Su Huan's tone carried a hint of detached sarcasm. You can choose not to go. The monsters are going to attack from behind anyway, where can you run to? Zioba, lock the door. Let them think it over. With that, ignoring the anxious calls of the workers behind him, he led Kizaoba and the others back to the storage room. Really lock it? Kizaoba asked. of course. Su Huan turned on the storage room's nightlight and saw the boy sitting there, a faint look of pity on his face. Seeing this, he knew the boy's saintly side was acting up. He needed some serious counseling. Su Huan calmly said, "You mean there are many innocent people behind us?" Qiaoba nodded. "But there are also many malicious people there." Su Huan crouched down, making sure his line of sight was level with Qiaoba's, and said, word by word, "But protecting others comes before ensuring our own safety. There are two ways to prevent their deaths. One is for us to deal with the night demon ourselves, but that would mean facing attacks from malicious people. The other is to force those with malicious intent to deal with the night demon, which would ensure our safety while also achieving the goal of protecting the majority. So, which do you plan to choose?" Chapter 20 The Perpetual Motion Cardinal. Qiaoba hesitated for a moment, then said firmly, "I choose the second option." A satisfied smile appeared on Su Huan's lips. Eighth Master, a 15-year-old disabled boy, had survived the apocalypse and protected so many people. It wasn't just his saintly heart that saved him. Remember, act with swift and decisive compassion. Su Huan returned the assessment of Eighth Master that others had given him in his past life. Qiaoba was stunned, silently repeating this phrase in his mind, lost in thought. Su Huan stood up, his smile fading. "Tonight's shift. Wanxing, go to the front of the train. Also, tell Lion Quan to reduce speed and, according to plan, switch from the Wenxi line to the Mojiang City line. Keep an eye on the water plants and the movements of the zombie hordes in various locations." Wanxing glanced at Xiaoba and got up to leave. Su Huan turned to Yujing and her daughter. "Xiaoba and I will keep watch for the first half of the night. I'll call you when it's time." Just as the two were about to leave, Su Huan suddenly remembered and called out, "Oh, and get me another chair." The mother and daughter then left. Su Huan picked up 2 cans of yellow peaches from the shelf and tossed one to Qiaoba. The boy instinctively wanted to refuse, but Su Huan opened the can and shoved it into his hand. "Eating some food will speed up your energy recovery." Qiaoba hesitated for a moment, then took the small fork and slowly took a bite. The smooth texture made the boy's eyes light up, and he moved much faster. Su Huan smiled inwardly. He had only learned by chance that Xiaoba loved canned yellow peaches. However, resources were scarce in the apocalypse, especially such premium fruit canned goods, so he usually gave most of them to the children. There's an order to eating canned yellow peaches. The first bite must be a sip of the juice from the can. Su Huan patiently explained. A little while later, Yujing and her daughter brought over a chair, along with his sniper crossbow. Su Huan lay down on the chair, holding the crossbow, listening to the rhythmic clanging sounds around him, his eyes half closed. The sounds of movement were much more reassuring than complete silence. Of course, Su Huan wasn't entirely idle. In this state, if he didn't think about anything, he'd fall asleep in no time. He was mainly thinking about his evolutionary path. Once his main ability, or general energy conversion, reached level 3, he could consider a profession. Different skills combined, along with suitable gene serums or special stimuli, could allow an evolved individual to form a profession. At this point, the evolved individual was called a Tier 1 professional. Their combat power was roughly equivalent to Tier 1 zombie locked outside the train car. The difference was mainly due to individual combat skills. Evolved individuals mostly relied on general energy, while zombies relied on mutated bodies, hence some say that zombies represent another path of evolution. Su Huan held several important pieces of information regarding the evolutionary path of energy donors, causing him to struggle with a decision. One was a Tier 5 evolutionary agent developed by Deep Blue Data called Blazing Sun Archangel, geared towards large-scale battles and energy bursts, considered a deterrent weapon for large forces. However, he only had the synthesis methods for Tiers 1 to 3 of this evolutionary agent. The latter 2 tiers were locked by Deep Blue Data, making them difficult for outsiders to access. There are 2 more options. One is the Light Energy Explorer, which can only reach the 2nd tier, and the other is the Alchemist, which can reach the 3rd tier. Because the potions were developed by different companies, their names will differ greatly. These 2 are very powerful in terms of functionality, but the subsequent professions haven't been developed yet, so they can't be chosen. The only complete evolutionary path he has, from the 1st to the 5th tier, is called Perpetual Motion Cardinal. According to what that madman told him, once this evolutionary path reaches the 5th tier, the evolver himself will become a perpetual motion machine with infinite versatility. This was researched by the cult of the machine god, and no one has verified it yet. If it were developed by Deep Blue Data, Su Huan would have done it without hesitation. But the cult of the machine god is second only to those who play with forbidden techniques in terms of danger. A group of mentally ill people who firmly believe they are not sick is already dangerous enough, but what's even more terrifying is that they can also conduct research. Su Huan is also struggling with this. The first-tier profession of perpetual motion cardinal is energy storage caller. The conditions aren't complicated: LV3 general energy conversion plus LV3 high energy compression plus LV1 energy shaping, absorbing all the general energy of a first-tier zombie during the evolution process. Of course, the latter conditions aren't absolute. If one has a Deep Blue Data bracelet, one can monitor their own energy level, and when it reaches 10 units, evolution is possible. Currently, accurate monitoring is impossible, and Su Huan estimates his energy as insufficient. He can simply operate according to these conditions. Judging from the first-tier energy storage core, this evolution direction seems quite reliable. Perhaps he should give it a try? A knock on the door interrupted Su Huan's dangerous thought. Looking up, he saw Gao Zhi's gloomy face peeking through the gaps in the 3 locks. "Open the door," Su Huan said calmly, standing up. Click-clack, clang. A series of mechanical sounds rang out. Kizile Oba unlocked the locks, and the door opened, revealing the 6th storage compartment completely to Gao Zhi. Looking at the abundance of supplies before him, Gao Zhi's face grew increasingly grim. He tossed a night demon's corpse onto the floor and said coldly, "It's dead. I don't need a ticket to board the train anymore." Su Huan glanced at Gao Zhi's severed left arm, then at the night demon at his feet, its head a mangled mess, and gasped. Close combat against a Tier 1 zombie, what kind of iron-blooded war god was this? He quickly grabbed a first aid kit from the shelf, stepped forward, and said with a warm smile, "The armed train will serve Mr. Gao wholeheartedly from now on." The two were practically touching, but looking at Su Huan's smile, Gao Zhi felt helpless. His intuition told him that in this situation, fighting Su Huan would only lead to death. He gave Su Huan a deep look, picked up the first aid kit, squatted down on one leg, picked up a 50-centimeter-long steel bar from the ground, and limped back to the rear carriage. The workers respectfully made way for him. Both Su Huan and Gao Zhi were figures they couldn't afford to fend, though the former was more terrifying, while the latter, who helped them fend off the hordes of zombies, was more respectable. As for the train that helped them fend off even more zombies, that was the train's doing. What did it have to do with Su Huan? Su Huan watched Gao Zhi's figure gradually disappear into the darkness, a hint of regret in his eyes. He'd killed a Tier 1 night demon with just a short stick. He'd never heard of such a formidable figure in his past life. He must have been unlucky, falling into some corner. Close the door. The iron door closed, the locks tightening. Su Huan felt like a villain, betraying a hero and sealing him away. But there was nothing he could do. Reality was cruel. Su Huan couldn't let him into the front carriages anytime soon. Having such a powerful figure in the team would make Su Huan sleep uneasy, to say the least. Energy providers were too weak in the early stages. Before becoming high-level evolved beings, they could only rely on the train beneath their feet. Liang Quan, Wanxing, Yujing, and Yu may each have their own value. But the most important thing they have in common is that none of them pose a threat to Su Huan. The only one, Kizile Oba, is someone he knows very well. In the short term, these will be his criteria for selecting team members. Chapter 21 Childish Games. Dark blue sunlight seeped into the carriage through the gaps in the explosion-proof mesh, casting dampened, cool light on the metal shelves. The hum of the air conditioner, maintained at 22 degrees Celsius, mingled with the rhythmic vibrations of the wheels rolling over the rails. Yujing curled up in a corner of the metal shelf in the storage room, her head resting on a large bottle of cola. The round plastic bottle emitted a subtle coolness, creating a delicate tug-of-war with a thin layer of sweat seeping from the back of her neck. Su Huan fiddled with a small digital watch in his hand, his thumb brushing over it. It showed 5:27. He casually magnetically attached the watch to a nearby shelf. He had kept watch all night, and apart from the night demon that Gao Zhi had killed, there had been no other danger. He closed his eyes to rest. Su Huan was very experienced with staying up all night. He could enter a light sleep state, half awake and half asleep, leaving his sentry duties entirely to his body's intuition. This light sleep state had once sustained him for 4 days and 2 nights, until the evolved beast left due to extreme hunger. Suddenly, a metallic clanging sound came from carriage number 4. Huan reflexively tensed his back, only relaxing when he heard Yu's distinctive, light footsteps. She must be preparing breakfast. He suddenly thought, hoping for a bowl of seafood porridge. He heard Yu's footsteps behind him. The woman glanced at her daughter in the corner and asked softly, "What would you like for breakfast, Mr. Su?" Huan lay back in his chair, squinting. "Don't be so polite, or I'll feel like you're being sarcastic." Yu bit her lower lip, somewhat embarrassed. She was much older than Huan, but she couldn't call him Little Su, could she? "Su, Brother Su?" Aunt Yu's tone was slightly affected, not obvious, but different from how the people behind her addressed her. Huan suddenly felt it was pointless to dwell on this and casually said, "I remember there's a lot of frozen seafood in the dining car's refrigerator. Let's make some porridge. Frozen food should be given priority in the future." "Okay." The noise made it impossible for Huan to close his eyes anymore, so he got up and went to carriage number 5 to open the curtains. The sudden burst of sunlight cast a striking contrast of light and shadow across the carriage. Huan squinted, gazing out the window. The mountains and fields were lush with vegetation, the once verdant landscape now dotted with vibrant red plants. It seemed as if pairs of eyes were observing the train from the depths. As the train moved forward, the land and scenery were slowly left behind. Huan returned to carriage number 6 and went to Yujing's side. She had arrived early the previous night, relieving her mother and staying up half the night. By morning, she was exhausted and wanted to lie down for a while. Her gray blouse was draped by her ample breasts, revealing the smooth skin of her lower abdomen. Huan's playful side stirred. He knelt down and gently stroked around her navel with his fingertips. He didn't use much force, just lightly rubbing with his fingerprints. After a moment, Yujing opened her bloodshot eyes, glanced at Huan, and then turned her head to sleep again. Her beautiful, fair neck was now displayed before him. A moment later, Yujing felt a slight itch on her neck again and let out a soft sigh. "How about you just give me a quick death?" "No." Huan sneered, continuing his childish game of playing with her hair. "You give it to me and I have to take it? Who's in charge here?" Besides, he felt that mentally torturing Yujing gave him more pleasure than actually doing it. Anyway, it's all candy in his mouth. The longer he savors it, the sweeter it tastes when he finally eats it. Yujing couldn't sleep at all. She opened her eyes and looked at the cold smile on Huan's face, feeling annoyed. She should have given in to him that night. Maybe she would be tired of him by now. Now, she had aroused the man's damned desire to conquer, and she didn't know how long this would take. Yujing's lips curled up into a beautiful smile. "Brother, how about we go inside?" "Shut up, disgusting." "Yujing." This confrontation ended with Yujing's hasty escape. Huan said that although his body was very tired from staying up all night, his spirits were very high. He returned to his room, put down his sniper crossbow, and then took out his notebook to record today's log. December 19th, early winter, 28 degrees Celsius. "I think I've created a hero." Train conductor's log. Arriving at the dining car, his eyes were drawn to a khaki blanket on the sofa, printed with a chubby orange cat, its smile mischievous, adding a touch of warmth to the carriage. Yu noticed his gaze and said, "I saw the blanket was idle, and I thought it would look nice here." Sure, it's up to you, don't tell me." Huan waved his hand dismissively. He slumped onto the sofa, lost in thought. Around 7 o'clock, Wan Xing and Qi Xiaoba also came out. The train slowly came to a stop in the suburbs. Liang Quan, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion, walked into the dining car. "The nearest water plant is about a 10-minute drive away, we'll be there soon." Huan took the seafood porridge Yu handed him, sniffing the aroma. "No rush, let the passengers off first, then you can go and rest." "Understood." Liang Quan took the porridge and drank it down in large gulps. Huan turned to Wan Xing. "Later, you should first collect the night demon corpses from the storage compartment. Besides the universal energy crystal, see if you can get any other materials." The zombies' greatest contribution wasn't the universal energy crystal, but their various bizarre physical evolution strategies. This was something a researcher from a large company Huan knew in his previous life had told him. But currently, Wan Xing's ability development was too low, and her utilization of the zombies was difficult to reach the genetic level. Huan didn't have high expectations for her, he just wanted her to dismantle some useful materials. Like those claws, they were all high-strength materials. Accumulating them would be useful in the future. Huan nodded silently. Su Huan knew her abilities better than she did. There was no need to question her, just do as she was told. Watching the steam rising from the seafood porridge, Su Huan pondered, today's work has only one item, check the damage to the train and continue with the first phase of the armed train plan. Everyone responded. The carriage in front of them was very transparent. Su Huan thought for a long time before coming up with this accurate and vivid description. Hundreds of coin-sized holes pierced the surface of the green carriage, penetrating the cushioning and insulation layers, creating gaping wounds. Of the 12 pairs of windows, only 2 remained intact, the rest were shattered into various fragments. The relatively thin roof had also been scratched into a large crater by the night demon. To be honest, Su Huan almost wanted to remove this carriage altogether. After all, they wouldn't need so many carriages anytime soon, and the passenger count had decreased by 63 last night. What surprised him was that Dog Brother had survived, as had the family's daughter-in-law. Although she looked terrified, she wasn't covered in blood. The tattooed man's death was swift and decisive, a single blow fatal. Besides this, the carriages behind, without steel plates, had numerous claw marks, but none were as severe as this. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22 Train Renovation Progress. Most of the zombies in carriages 10 and 11 are dead. Huan needs to work overtime, otherwise all these reserve crystals will be wasted. Su Huan tapped on a cracked window, and with a crash, glass shattered on the floor. He shook his head and said, forget it, you guys figure it out. Just detach this carriage and leave it here. Bring the baggage car over and connect it, then check the luggage inside. Wang He wiped his sweat and agreed. His attitude was much more respectful than yesterday. After spending the night on the train, he figured out why Su Huan was the train conductor. He was also very glad he had stepped forward. There were 2 other workers of his rank, but they had reservations that day and hadn't come forward. Alright, get to work. If anything happens, talk to Xiaoba, Su Huan said with a yawn. This time, apart from Gao Zhe and the 120 construction workers, the remaining passengers were still forced off the train. There were no steel plate tasks, just normal resource collection. There were no strict requirements to find medicine, and bringing back purified water would even get a random mood discount from the train conductor. After assigning tasks, Su Huan went back to the train to catch up on sleep. He was woken up at 2 p.m. by noise. Opening the door, he saw Yujing directing Qi Xiaoba to tinker with something at the end of his carriage. What are you doing here? Su Huan asked curiously as he walked over. Qi Xiaoba was manipulating a metal plate in his hands. Yujing explained, didn't you say that each carriage should have a 4-ton purified water tank? Su Huan understood. It's time to make the tanks. We haven't had enough purified water lately, and I haven't showered in ages. The third section originally had 8 compartments, 3 of which he had combined, now serving as both a conversion room and a sleeping area. Although he didn't care much about sleep quality, it would be best to separate them in the future. That way, it would take up at least 6 compartments, leaving 1 at the front and back. The last one had already been dismantled by Yujing, and Xiaoba was making a water tank out of stainless steel. Looking at the remaining space, Yujing said, it seems there's enough room for the fuel tank too. She pulled a pencil from her hair, sketched a few lines on the drawing, and said crisply, almost there. We'll finish it in a bit. Xiaoba's abilities are really good, the welded metal has no gaps, it's completely sealed. Su Huan touched his forehead with his fingertip and said, let's dismantle that compartment in front too, and turn it into an open-plan living room. Okay. After giving his instructions, he walked towards the rear carriages. He first checked the progress of the steel armor. The steel armor of the first 13 carriages had been welded, and the details were very well done. Every window had a blast-proof net, and the gaps between the panels had been melted by Xiaoba's skill. It felt very smooth to the touch, without a single burr. Some large scratches and dents had also been smoothed out. If it weren't for the bloodstains that hadn't been wiped away, last night's zombie horde would seem like a dream. Each carriage edge had 3 20-centimeter triangular protrusions to prevent large area attacks from directly contacting the carriages. The last 5 carriages only had simple welding on the 2 sides. The explosion-proof netting hadn't even been installed yet. The baggage car replaced number 24. And the damaged car was abandoned on the adjacent tracks. While sleeping, he felt the train move slightly, but didn't pay much attention. It was probably just moving this thing. Workers ate their boxed lunches sitting in the cars or by the tracks. Huan glanced at one, stir-fried shredded potatoes with vinegar and rice, with dried chili flakes. After checking the progress, he entered the car for a routine inspection of the supplies. Despite Huan's seemingly careless approach, he knew better than anyone how much was on the train. Trusting people is fine, but you can't be clueless yourself. Especially about something as vital as this. Soft footsteps approached. Huan's gaze instinctively shifted to the side. Yu walked over from the other side of the car, wearing a cardigan with an apron over it. The bright yellow fabric against her face enhanced her gentle charm. "Brother Su, the food is ready." Huan stood up and stretched. "What did you make?" "The main dishes are stewed beef with potatoes, stir-fried vegetable meatballs with vinegar, 2 kinds of seafood, 1 spicy and 1 non-spicy, plus a corn and pork rib soup." Huan glanced at Aunt Yu in surprise. The dishes had a good balance of sweet, sour, salty, and savory. It seemed he had put some thought into it. Yu saw that Huan had only half organized the supplies at his feet and quickly came over to help organize them. Huan also sorted some loose items and put them on the shelves. He picked out some food with short shelf lives and handed it to Yu. "That's enough, no need to tidy up anymore, go ahead." Yu stopped, wanting to keep a proper distance from Huan, but the aisle of the storage compartment was only so wide. If Huan didn't move, she couldn't get through. The night light was off, and the light from the compartment behind them swept across Huan's face, illuminating Yu's hands, which were holding a pile of miscellaneous items, making them appear white from the force. Huan sensed her hesitation and slightly turned his body to the side. Yu nervously walked over, feeling the pressure of Huan's breath on her skin as she passed him, but nothing happened until she was completely past. There was none of the expected groping or inappropriate touching. For some reason, she felt a slight sense of disappointment. "You can shower once every 3 days, but not for more than 10 minutes, Huan reminded her. Although Aunt Yu still smelled nice, the hair at her temples was greasy and stuck to her face, making her look a bit like a wife consumed by desire in a Korean drama. He preferred something clean and cozy, like a blanket sun-dried. A faint blush rose on Yu's beautiful swan-like neck, and she let out a soft hum. Her legs moved so fast she wanted to fly out of the carriage. Huan was slightly puzzled. He had only mentioned it casually, thinking about the train's water supply. After she passed, he went to the shelf inside and grabbed a few bottles of soda before heading to the dining car. The food was already on the table, and everyone was waiting for him. "Get me a glass, and some ice, too," Huan said. Upon his arrival, everyone took their seats in turn. Under the warm yellow sunlight, the tangy aroma of sweet and sour meatballs mingled with the fragrance of pork rib soup, filling their nostrils. Huan poured himself a glass of cola, watching the fine bubbles pop crisply against the whiskey ice. Then tilted his head back and downed it in one gulp. He savored the icy sensation of the cola flowing down his throat and into his stomach, chasing away the heat. "Also refreshing. You guys should have some too." Huan handed out several bottles of soda. After pouring their drinks, everyone instinctively looked at Huan. They had figured out his temperament. Breakfast was usually for assigning tasks, and dinner was usually for evaluation. Seeing their willingness to cooperate, Huan was satisfied. "You all saw the results of the first phase of the armed train project last night, and I'm quite satisfied with the current results, but we still need to speed things up." Chapter 23 Nature's Slaughter. "We don't have enough metal plates," Yu Jing suddenly said. Huan raised an eyebrow. This was indeed a problem. Although metal was everywhere in the city, Kizioba needed to melt it again with his abilities, which was far less efficient than using standard steel plates directly. Slowly melting and modifying it like this might mean they wouldn't even be able to complete the first phase of the plan by the time they broke out of the high-temperature zone. But the problem was, where could they get so many steel plates? Returning to the steel mill was out of the question. Even if all the first-tier zombies there were gone, he wouldn't turn back. Su Huan pondered for a moment and said, let's melt down the idle carriages outside today. We can look for a steel mill or something similar once we get into Mojiang City. No problem, Kizaoba agreed. How many universal energy crystals did you extract today? Su Huan asked. Wanzing put down her cup and took out a universal energy crystal the size of a thumbnail from her pocket. Besides its size, the crystal's edges had fine, regular, and beautiful lines, exuding a bewitching vitality that seemed ready to grow at any moment. The night demons? Yes, this universal energy crystal is very special. Extracting it is much more difficult than from a regular zombie, and it's also harder to mold it together. Su Huan took the universal energy crystal, a hint of joy on his face, and explained, this is a first-tier universal energy crystal. Its characteristic is this special pattern around it. It will crack after about 5 days. Wanzing was somewhat surprised. I have the same feeling. Why is that? You can think of it as a first-tier universal energy crystal having a higher energy density. If it's not solidified by the collector, it's very easy to crack. Solidification, is that a skill? After long-term extraction of energy solidification, you'll probably have this ability, Su Huan said. The collector's energy solidification and the energy provider's energy compression are similar in status, both being easily generated abilities, so no company or organization produces corresponding potions. But high energy compression is different. Although it differs from energy compression by only one word, the difficulty of obtaining it is worlds apart. Evolvers must be exposed to high-pressure energy for a long time. Apart from those lunatics of the mechanical god cult, no one would put themselves in a high-risk environment. However, after the skill was discovered, it was quickly cracked by various forces, and corresponding gene potions were developed. The cost was relatively low among high-level skills. It also became an essential skill for energy providers. Besides that, I also decomposed some other things from that night demon corpse. Wanzing said, taking out a small glass bottle containing a layer of amber liquid, barely covering the bottom. Everyone's gaze fell on the glass bottle, then turned back to Su Huan, waiting for his explanation. Su Huan was somewhat surprised, not expecting that Wanzing had actually collected materials. Perhaps it could be used to cultivate decomposers. He took it, shook it gently, and explained, a first-tier material that can be used to synthesize the defender's gene potion. Yujing stared at the potion as if bewitched, her amber eyes shimmering, and asked almost unconsciously, can I have this material? Su Huan looked at her with slight suspicion. What do you want this for? I want to study it. Yujing raised her chin slightly, her phoenix eyes revealing that fervent, inquisitive gaze again. Before the manufacturer mixes it, this stuff is contagious, and it takes effect much faster than being bitten by a zombie. I know what I'm doing. Yujing's tone was crisp and decisive. Aunt Yu's heart skipped a beat, and she carefully observed Su Huan's expression. She only relaxed when she saw that he wasn't angry. Never mind, here you go, don't misuse it. Su Huan thought for a moment, but still didn't stop her. After all, Yujing was an important talent for the armed train, and she should be given some leniency. Su Huan asked, is there any more? That's all for now. The night demon's corpse outside might not be extracted until tonight, Wanzing said. We can extract the ones from 3 ordinary zombies first, and then give the extracted energy crystals directly to the 3 of them. Seeing everyone looking at him in surprise, Su Huan calmly said, we will face more crises later, and we may not have so much time. Become an evolved being as soon as possible. The train of doomsday will not wait for anyone. Suddenly, the entire side of the number 2 sightseeing carriage cracked open, and 2 hydraulic levers slowly pulled it down, revealing the entire interior of the carriage. On the left was a forklift with a boom, painted red, and next to it was a motorcycle lying low on the ground. Liang Quan, who had just finished eating, put on gloves and climbed into the forklift's cab. With some time before dark, he needed to drive the forklift to help the workers load steel plates. Using the ramp built between the side of the truck and the ground, he easily drove it outside. The workers inside, seeing the forklift emerge, got off and started working. Time flew by, and soon it was evening. A few scattered passengers returned with a small amount of supplies, expecting to be harassed by Su Huan. Unexpectedly, Su Huan only took half the usual amount of supplies and let them board. It wasn't out of kindness, but because this was in the suburbs, supplies were scarce. If he turned away all these passengers, he would have no one on his truck. which would be detrimental to his plans. The passengers also brought back bad news. The water plant ahead had been occupied by a group claiming to be from Fangxing property. Su Huan sat in his compartment, legs crossed, deep in thought as he stared at the map on the wall. The orange-red sunset reflected in the glass gradually faded from his eyes, leaving only a chilling glint. He'd never heard of this group in his past life. In fact, he'd never heard of any of the forces operating in the high-temperature zone. His only memories were of a few armed convoys that had slowly coalesced during their escape. The rest had stayed here, becoming acquaintances as the heat wave intensified. Now, the enemy had seized the water plant, and only the plant possessed small, integrated water purifiers, the key to the armed train's self-circulation, and his reason for staying. Although there were many more water plants along the way, this was the closest to the railway tracks. The others were at least 10 kilometers away. And integrated water purifiers weren't small appliances to be carried around, they were modular industrial equipment. Even if he drove the passengers to their deaths, no one could bring them back. He certainly couldn't abandon the train and run over 10 kilometers to dismantle a water purifier. The only way was through this water plant. If he missed it, his days outside the high-temperature zone would be miserable. Su Huan recalled a terrifying scene from the depths of his memory, a sense of unease and anxiety rising within him. In his previous life, when they had just escaped the sweltering heat, everyone was excited as the drizzle began to fall. Some even stripped off their clothes and ran wildly in the rain, howling. They felt nature's bounty, the cool rain, and the hope and freedom of escaping death. But little did they know, it wasn't nature's gift, but rather nature's new wave of slaughter. Chapter 24 Strong Medicine. Some say the 12 catastrophes are a potent catalyst for evolution. Others say 16. The madmen of the Mechanicus cult proclaim that omnipotence is the energy leaking from Pandora's box, that evolved beings are chosen ones blessed by God, and that machines are the arks that carry human bodies. Those who play on taboos vehemently denounce this, chanting that steel decays and flesh revels. But for ordinary people like Su Huan in this apocalypse, it was a chilling massacre. He escaped the heat in a month, but it took him 3 years to barely escape the acid rain. Before he could even catch his breath, he was engulfed by the ensuing flood. He still vividly remembers the burning sensation of the floodwaters eroding his skin and flesh. Rainwater filled his nostrils, the stinging pain enveloping every nerve, a despair with nowhere to hide and nowhere to escape. But more fortunate than most, he was reborn. Unfortunately, if he didn't plan carefully, he might have to experience it again. According to Su Huan's prediction, his armed train would only be barely able to protect itself once it reached the third stage. Phase 1, a reasonably robust physical defense, freshwater recycling, resource reserves, a small, well-coordinated team, and a large workforce. Phase 2, a defense system to withstand various natural disasters, a dual recycling system for freshwater and food, a simple weapons system, an evolved human squad, and a clearly defined class-based trained society. Phase 3, a dynamic defense system, a resource recycling system, an energy recovery system, a powerful weapons system, initial research capabilities, an evolved human team, and a trained society. He not only needs to survive, but also, relying on his memories from his previous life, seize resources and talent in advance during these disasters. Only then can he create a snowball effect, making the armed train a doomsday power like Deep Blue Data. Therefore, his time is very tight, and he has been trying his best to avoid the train appearing in the city. He doesn't want to waste time with these people who are about to be eliminated. But now, this conflict seems inevitable. The sun sets, darkness engulfs the carriage, only Su Huan's seat has a pair of eyes that shine slightly. Hopefully they'll be smart enough to accept my deal. He pulled out his journal and a black pen from the pen holder on the table. He first wrote a calendar in the journal, then crossed out the numbers one by one. The scratching sound of the pen was like a sharp knife, swift and decisive. 4:15 a.m. Su Huan slowly opened his eyes, not turning on the light, but waiting until his eyes adjusted to the darkness before quietly sitting up in bed. He lifted a corner of the curtain and stared intently out the car window. Faint moisture seeped in through the cracks in the window, and countless invisible raindrops pierced through the blast-proof mesh, hitting the inner steel plate. The window next to his bed had been broken last time, but since there was nothing to replace it with, he simply left it empty and welded an openable steel plate to the inner layer. The steel plate had two modes, one was to open completely, and the other was to pull a handle to turn it into a louvered window, allowing people inside to observe the outside situation. With a steel plate and blast-proof mesh, nothing could get in. I can always replace it with tempered glass later when I have the means. After observing for a long time, Su Huan didn't smell any pungent odor or hear any strange noises. Only then did he cautiously open the steel plate and reach out his hand. The humid and stuffy air instantly rushed into the carriage, even the rainwater carried a hint of warmth. Feeling the dampness on his palm, Su Huan brought it to his nose and smelled it, only relaxing after confirming it was ordinary rainwater. The heat from his hand evaporated the raindrops instantly. Standing by the window for 10 minutes, Su Huan closed the steel plate, as if the boundless darkness held an irresistible allure for him. Silently opening the door, Su Huan walked quietly down the corridor, from the front of the train to carriage number 7, standing in each carriage for about 5 minutes, letting his all-encompassing senses cover every corner, including the compartments of Kiziloba and the others. Of course, this wasn't to check their sleep quality, but simply his way of eliminating potential dangers. He didn't like having things he didn't know about in his train. Suddenly, some subtle changes outside caught his attention. It was exactly 5 a.m., and he decided to write in his log first. December 20th, early winter, 29 degrees Celsius, the train conductor always has endless worries. Train conductor's log. The train lay quietly on the tracks. From the direction of the water plant, several trams were stopped on the road. A group of people, armed with long knives and clubs, got off the trams and nervously trudged through the mud towards the train. If it weren't for the clouds obscuring the moonlight, their security uniforms would be clearly visible. Damn it, it's raining. The leader was a man with slanted eyes and a high nose, looking somewhat sinister. If we can get this train down, we won't have to get wet anymore. A rugged-looking man next to him said. It was none other than Dog Brother, who had miraculously survived last night. If we really manage to get it down, Dog Brother, you'll be my brother, but if... The slanted-eyed man gave a forced smile, leaving the rest of his sentence unfinished. Dog Brother's face was grim, but he didn't refute. The kid was dead, and 5 of his brothers had died in one night. Those he used to bully now looked at him as if they wanted to devour him. Without these brothers, he didn't dare close his eyes on the train. He decided to go all in and not go back. But the thought of Su Huan's armed train made him resentful. A mobile, well-supplied, and sturdy fortress that could withstand zombie hordes, it was practically paradise in the apocalypse. He decided to take a gamble, contacting the water plant's Starry Sky property and cooperating with them. He would lead the way, they would lead the men, and they would take down the armed train under cover of night. Their leader was not only an evolved being, but more importantly, he had a gun. With Gao Zhi's inside help, he refused to believe they couldn't take down Su Huan. As long as you can open the door, we're definitely going to take him on, Dog Brother whispered. Third brother, it's your turn. The slanted-eyed man turned to look at a shifty-looking guy carrying a police baton and wearing a security guard hat askew. Hearing the voice, he quickly stepped forward. He glanced at Dog Brother first, then grinned obsequiously. Don't you know my lock-picking skills, Hu Tao? Old Wang's wife changed 6 locks, and I got in every single one, didn't I? Seeing his brother's confidence, the guy with the slanted eyes also wore a smug expression. Don't brag. If you can't get in, I'll just tear your blue string. Hey, isn't that it up ahead? The shifty-faced guy said, pointing to the steel dragon on the tracks ahead. The group looked up and saw the nearly 5-meter-high train silhouette, faintly visible in the rain, its dark steel deck exuding a powerful aura. Just looking at it gave them a sense of security. The guy with the slanted eyes lit up. Good stuff, really good stuff. Chapter 25, Try this? Dog Brother's face showed a look of apprehension. Thinking of Su Huan's mysterious methods, he whispered a reminder, keep your voices down. That Su guy is an evolved human, he's elusive. Old Hu's eyes flashed with mockery. An evolved human? Who isn't? But even evolved humans fear the truth. Old Hu subconsciously touched the cold thing in his waistband, and the man who could manipulate fire came to mind. That fire was indeed eerie. It had roasted the 3 of them, only to be killed with a single shot. Now their bodies had been gnawed into skeletons by zombies. This was also the reason he dared to steal the car even after hearing that the other party was an evolved human. The early morning rain, carrying a sultry heat, lashed against them. Several dark figures moved shakily through the mud. Finally, they got close. The security guard with slanted eyes, his uniform soaked through and sticky against his back, wiped his face and looked at the steel train with eager eyes. "This is the carriage." Dog Brother pointed to carriage number 3 in a low voice, the mechanical door latch gleaming coldly in the rain. "Don't get it wrong. We've been observing for a long time. That guy surnamed Sue lives in this carriage. As long as we take him out, the remaining women and the cripple are ours to do with." The man with the slanted eyes inwardly mocked Dog Brother's cowardice. In the apocalypse, there were plenty of women. At first, they would try to trade food for them. Later, they stopped trading altogether and just grabbed whoever they wanted. "As long as we get the train, all those women are yours." Third Brother, as he approached to unlock the train, stepped into a puddle, making a splash, and was glared at fiercely by the man with the slanted eyes. Third Brother trembled as he pulled out his toolbox, the flashlight in his mouth, the beam sweeping across the keyhole, a sense of relief washing over him. "It's an old-fashioned mechanical lock. I really wouldn't know what to do if it were electronic." The guy with the slanted eyes sniffed excitedly, a sly glint in his eyes. "Let's get it working quickly, then we can all have a good meal." The group excitedly crowded around the train, some even crouching down near the windows, all staring intently at the small tool in Lao San's hands. Lao San remained silent, tinkering away. The soft, rattling sounds were like the rustling of mice. 30 seconds passed, and the guy with the slanted eyes was still excited. 1 minute passed, and his expression turned serious. 3 minutes passed, and his face tightened. 5 minutes passed, and his expression darkened. 10 minutes passed, and his face twitched. "I bet it was that old Wang's wife who left the door open for you," Dog Brother sarcastically remarked. "Logically, it should be open by now. This kind of lock is like this." Lao San's hands trembled as he tried to twist the lock, but it wouldn't budge. "Useless." Hu Tao grabbed Lao San's collar, his face shadowed by the light from Lao San's hand. "Didn't you say there wasn't a lock you couldn't open?" Give me 10 minutes, Lao San said, cold sweat mingling with the rain as the screwdriver scraped against the keyhole. The distant, dragging footsteps of zombies echoed, the rain mingling with the low growls of the horde. The men's hands, gripping their machetes, grew even wetter. "Hurry up." Hu Tao cursed under his breath. 5 minutes later, the lock suddenly creaked open. They looked and saw the screwdriver in Lao San's hand had broken off inside. The man with the slanted eyes turned pale, his gloomy face seemingly dripping with water. "Third Brother, you've been with me for a year, haven't you?" The third brother's face was even more ashen than if you were crying. "Hu Tao, give me another chance. Don't rush, how about trying this?" Someone handed over a pair of pliers. The third brother was overjoyed and hurriedly reached for them. "This will do, this will do." His hand froze halfway through, looking as if he had seen a ghost. A figure completely hidden in the darkness stood inside the car window, handing over a pair of pliers through the blast net. Suddenly, raindrops hit the window frame, the jumping raindrops gleaming coldly and illuminating a young face with a gentle smile. The man with the slanted eyes was also startled, never expecting that the person he was plotting against had been right beside them all along. Ignoring the cold sweat dripping into his eyes, he subconsciously reached for the pistol at his waist. "Don't you need it?" Su Huan's smile vanished, and his fingers loosened their grip on the pliers. The pliers slammed onto the ground, splashing water everywhere. Steel, rainy night, this was his territory. Su Huan thought to himself, as high-voltage current surged from beneath his feet into the train. The cold blue arc of electricity, like a long blade, was drawn by the raindrops, transforming into countless blue threads that suddenly slashed at the people outside the train. The hair on the man with the slanted eyes stood on end, as if he'd been stabbed, his muscles tensing in pain. He only managed half of drawing his gun before his body convulsed. His hand pressed against his waist, his eyes rolled back. Bang, bang. A series of thuds echoed as he fell to the ground. After a moment, the man with the slanted eyes recovered, his muscles relaxed, and he struggled to get up, begging for mercy. Crack, another arc of electricity flashed, crackling loudly. This time, the man with the slanted eyes lay obediently in the mud, no longer struggling. Why not just buy a ticket honestly? Why take this crooked route? Su Huan muttered, an invisible energy fluctuation emanating from beneath his feet, its edge just touching the body of the man with the slanted eyes on the ground. Level 1 energy perception. Inside storage car number 6, the nightlight provided steady illumination. Ko Zhe stood in the bridge, his only remaining right hand holding a piece of rebar, frowning as he stared at the metal door before him, which resembled a hedgehog. The tips of the spikes were tinged with crimson. Through the gaps in the metal, he could see a young man in a black shirt sitting upright in a wheelchair, his eyes beneath his tousled hair filled with seriousness. If he had both hands, he was confident he could break through the door with a single blow, killing the young man instantly. After all, the young man was immobile. But now, missing a hand, a forced breakthrough would only result in a one-for-one exchange. "Su said you're dangerous," Kizaioba said, staring at Gao Ziechi. While observing the other party's condition, Gao Ziechi retorted sarcastically without hesitation, "You're more dangerous than me." Clear footsteps sounded from the other side of the door. Seeing Su Huan walking over leisurely, Gao Ziechi knew his chance was gone. He sighed inwardly. He had considered that Brother Gu might fall. But he hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. From beginning to end, he had only exchanged one blow with Kizaioba. "Mr. Gao, is something the matter that's keeping you up so late? The train offers late-night snacks, you know." Su Huan's face habitually wore a fake smile, his eyes cold. Gao Ziechi turned and left, not even uttering a harsh word. He might not even be able to take down one person. With two people together, especially in the cramped carriage, he had no chance. Forcing a move would result in being controlled to death like that night demon. Unless Su Huan left the train. "Wait a minute, I have a small job here. I wonder if Mr. Gao would be interested?" End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.